And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive Friday, January 30th, 9-game slate. And once again, I don't know how good of people we have been lately, but the DFS gods have given us another full slate, the whole bag. We're not cutting out any games. We got them all. Not as much injury news as we were expecting when I did the strategy show this morning, but still certainly tons of opportunities for late swap as you gain more information throughout the night. But the first thing we need to do right now, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. I would be at Josh Engleman, at DK__DFS. What's going on, dude?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Got a solid slate. 9 games, contests not the best, but I think it's a decent slate overall.
We should be able to have some fun breaking this bad boy down. We got plenty to talk about. Couple chalky options that still look pretty similar to what we had earlier today. Couple chalky options that look a little bit different. And allegedly, the return of Nikola Jokic today, which I certainly didn't see coming this morning, but we will get into all of it. Lucky for us, we get to talk about the Lakers and the Wizards first. There's no better way to start a day than that matchup. Not to mention whatever pop-up I just saw right before this got started that said the Lakers and Cavs were discussing Rui and Dalton Connect for DeAndre Hunter. So get excited. Deadline is coming. Lakers, Wizards. Got some info on the Lakers that we don't necessarily know quite yet. Austin Reeves, technically questionable for today. Luka Doncic, questionable for today. For the Wizards, no Chris Middleton, still no Marvin Bagley, no Trae Young. Trae Johnson is out. Tristan Vukcevic still hurt. If Luka Doncic plays, he's 20% owned, $11,900 today in this matchup against the Wiz. And then it's all Wiz in terms of ownership. Justin Champagnie around 10, Keyshawn George around 10, Alex Sarr around 10. Next highest Laker is just 5% to LeBron. But at this moment, what are your leans for the Lakers?
Yeah, so I think I lean that both are in right now. Lakers are 8.5-point favorites. I think that would be a bit lower if one of those guys, especially Luka, was out. But I couldn't really find anything definitive on the Luka ankle injury, so that's not like a super strong take. Do you have a take on those two?
It's tricky because it's both of them. And I don't know how limited Reeves will be, but in theory, he would be some sort of limited given he's been out for a month. If you're ever going to sit Luka Doncic for reasons, doing it in a matchup against the Wizards is probably the safer time to do that. I find it all very difficult. The good news is it shouldn't matter in the slightest. This is the only game that locks at 7:00. This is the one we will get the information for. So let's just say that it's going like it is right now. Luka's like 20% owned. Luka's in. How do you feel about locking in Luka Doncic at 7:00? Because obviously the matchup's pretty tasty.
Yeah, matchup's great. I think maybe right now going a little bit over owned, but we do have a decent amount of value on this slate. And Luka's obviously one of the better spend ups, assuming he plays. And like you said, match against the Wizards is phenomenal. And so there's only like a couple guys above 10K. We got Jamal Murray, who's basically unplayable now with Jokic most likely in, Cade against Golden State, and then Luka and obviously Jokic, who's going to be limited. So you have to spend your salary somehow. So I guess that's probably partly why you are getting a decent amount of ownership to Luka Doncic. So don't have a ton else to add there with Luka. As far as Austin Reeves goes, yeah, I think you're probably expecting like low to mid 20s minutes from him. So obviously you can't get to him at 8,100. LeBron at 89 is projected about 5% ownership. I think it's kind of tough to go there, assuming everyone is in. If you get one of those guys out, then I like LeBron more, especially if Luke is out. So that one kind of just waiting for the news there. But yeah, if all three of those, if Luka and Reeves are in, I'll probably pass on LeBron. And yeah, the minutes are down on Ayton, even in competitive games. Like I was looking at the rotation last game and just not great. He played 7 minutes in the first quarter and then 5 minutes in the second quarter. And obviously that game blew out. But yeah, so he was only pacing for like mid-20s minutes. So the minutes are way down on him. I think I'll pass and locking in one of my center spots there. And then, there's really not much else for the Lakers.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak there. Obviously, like I think LeBron is a more than reasonable option if we end up getting no Reeves. I don't really think you're going to see anything else here for the Lakers where you're thinking, I'm fine with locking this in at 7 o'clock. This will be the best thing that I can do is get this random 4K, 5K dude and have him for the entire slate. So yeah, no issues with Luka, obviously. What do you want to do? Well, just hypothetically, I assume you just open up the floodgates if they're both out.
Yeah, so if they're both out, then I think LeBron is probably your top spend up on the slate. He would look great. And then you're looking to Laravia, Marcus Smart, Rui Hachimura next, I would say. Laravia's 4.3, Smart is 5K, Rui's 4.2. I would probably try to get to at least one of those guys as well. And then you even throw in guys like Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent. Probably wouldn't get to those guys, but they would see a lot more run as well. So yeah, this would, if both those guys are out, the Lakers are probably one of your best teams to get to. It would be LeBron first, and then again, I would probably look to Laravia, Smart, and Rui next.
Yeah, that's just going to become a very, very different thing if they happen to both be out. I mean, someone like Nick Smith at the flat 3K could end up becoming super weird depending on how all of this breaks. So keep your eyes peeled. This is going to be very much a live before lock discussion. Those guys are going to get this news one way or the other. Might end up being much ado about nothing. Wizards are obviously missing a couple bodies here. Realistically, it's just 10% ownership for the top end of the Wizards. I feel like you probably have a little bit more interest in a 10% owned Alex Saw right now, just given how many minutes he's playing with no backup centers anywhere near him.
I do. Yeah, I like this Wizards team for tournaments if ownership holds. So yeah, Saar projecting for about 10% ownership. So on the front end of a back-to-back last night, he played 32 minutes, but we have seen Saar in competitive games push for 35 plus minutes. Like his previous 3 games were 36, 37, and 36. So I think that certainly is in the range of outcomes. You mentioned there's really no backup center right now. They DNP'd both Anthony Gill and Scal Labissiere last night. So you saw like small ball Justin Champagny backup 5. So they really didn't have a backup center last game. So yeah, I like the ceiling on Saar quite a bit. Again, I think you could very easily see 35 minutes here. So I think he's a pretty good option. As far as starting lineup goes for Washington, we're definitely going to get Keyshawn George, Saar, Carrington, and Koulibaly. Fifth starter, I think, could be a few different guys. I don't think it's Champagny, but I won't completely rule him out. Could be Will Riley. Could be Jameer Watkins. We've seen that before. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, the other pieces for Washington, like I said, I don't think Champagny is going to start, but I still think he's in play at 5K off the bench. Good point per minute. Projecting for 25 minutes right now. I think he could play a little bit more than that. Wizards have been running a much tighter rotation too in competitive games, which is good to see. The role on Keyshawn George has been great. He continues to play big minutes as well. Probably going to play mid-30s in a competitive game. Absolutely no issue getting to him at 10%. I'm higher on Bub Carrington in the field. He's only projecting for 8% ownership. I think he's going to play a ton here. So in the second half last game, once Trey Johnson went down, you saw Bub Carrington play the whole third quarter, and then he played another minute to start the fourth quarter, and then came back to play the last 5 minutes of the fourth there. So I think you could very easily see 35 plus minutes from Bub Carrington in a spot like this. So I think he's pretty interesting as well. Guys like Will Riley, Jameer Watkins, the Wizards value, probably not as excited about. I think I would rather get to, some Nets value or some other value, which we'll talk about later on, than locking in some of these, not great point per minute Wizards guys. But overall, yeah, I like Harrington, I like Saar, I like George, I like Champagny. I think they're all going a bit under-owned.
I'm going to throw this very stupid thing out there right now. Do as I do, not as I say. Get ready for Rui Hachimura to barely play today because of that fake trade thing, and it's going to go through tomorrow, and DeAndre Ayton plays 31 minutes tonight.
Yeah, that would tilt me. Just
putting it out there. It smells dirty and smells like it could happen. Who knows? I'm making that up. I'm just it's one of those things that I feel like I wake up and see in the morning more so than I'm predicting that happens. I'm waiting for the fuckery. 20% ownership to Luka Doncic on the FanDuel side, 15 for Keyshawn George, a little bit more for Bub Carrington. He's at 10. but this one looks a lot like it does on DraftKings. Very, very comparable ownership. You guys want to be on live before lock to make sure you get all that news as it comes in. That takes us away from 7 o'clock. We then get a huge chunk of 7:30 games, 4 of them, in fact. First up on the list, might be the easiest game to talk about on the entire slate, honestly. The Toronto Raptors are 2.5-point dogs in Orlando, 219 total. No Jakob Poeltl on the Toronto side. No Franz Wagner on the Magic side. The highest owned guy in this game, either team, doesn't matter, is 5% to either Desmond Bane or Jalen Suggs. Only 4 guys have ownership higher than 1.5. There's absolutely nothing here that I would be prioritizing. If I had Bane, Banchero, Barnes, I guess, Ingram, shortly, the guys that are definitely going to play like 30 something minutes, it's whatever. This is gross. There's nothing here.
Yeah, there's not a ton here, especially on the Toronto side. A lot of these guys are priced up from when they were relatively shorthanded. Now they're basically fully healthy outside of Jakob Poeltl, and so I don't think I would get to anyone on Toronto. The highest projected owned guy right now is Barrett at 1%. So, yeah, I think it's really hard to get to the Raptors. On the Magic side, still not much ownership here either. 5% to Bane, Suggs, and Paolo. Don't love the price point or matchup for Paolo, so I think I'll pass there. I think if I had to play someone, it would be one of these guards, either Suggs at 6,300 or Bane at 7K. In the most recent game for Orlando, you did see Jalen Suggs play. It was 29 minutes, which is good to see. So Orlando continues to play their starters a ton. Most recent game, you saw Anthony Black play 37.5 minutes, Paolo 38.5, Suggs 29, 36.5 for Bane, 27 for Wendell Carter Jr. So that's a positive, but again, it's really a price point plus matchup thing. So I think this is probably one of the least appealing games on the slate for DFS.
Yeah, I think Suggs would be the guy that I'm looking at here. We kind of had the same conversation whenever the hell they played Miami 2 nights ago. Only 5% owned here. We got him in for just north of 26 minutes. I think 30 is probably like a minute ceiling. You give him an extra 5 fantasy points right now, and he's going to look dramatically different. If I were going somewhere, it would be to Suggs, but there is just not a single cost-effective play in this game in comparison to everything else we're going to look at. There is one other game that's even worse than this, but this one's pretty brutal. Ooh, interesting. If Jokic is back today, he can miss 2 more games, and then he would be ineligible for awards.
I saw that, yeah. So he's definitely pushing to come back. But
I'll bet that he doesn't even know.
You don't think so?
I don't think he gives a shit about it.
Yeah,
of all the people, right. like sure, he would want it for whatever, but it doesn't affect his contract anymore, so I don't think he cares. He probably more than anybody else in the league cares less about personal accolades at this point than anything else. I mean, realistically, I want him to play 64 games and they get rid of this bullshit starting next year, but that's what we kind of need. We need Wemby to not have enough games and be the clear defensive player of the year and not get it. And then we need Jokic to not play enough games and then be, I can't say the clear MVP because, Shea just being on an awesome OKC team is going to be tough, but just get rid of the stupid rule.
Yeah, it's a really bad rule. Hopefully they fix it soon. So
would be ideal. Quick peek to Orlando and Toronto on the FanDuel side. It's the same story, but there is a bit more ownership here. Suggs got to 20% at 5,800. Colin Murray-Boyles, Banchero, Desmond Bane, all in that 10 to 15 range. So incrementally a bit more here. It seems like Suggs is a little bit more gettable. He's got the point guard, shooting guard eligibility as well. But again, in terms of aggregate ownership, that is not a game that's going to be pulling in all that much. This one might. Kings Celtics. For the Kings, no Russell Westbrook, no Domantas Sabonis, still no Keegan Murray. For Boston, no Amari Williams, no Jaylen Brown. Neemias Queta is available. And this is giving us pretty decent chunk of ownership on the Boston Celtics side in a fantastic matchup against the Sacramento Kings. 60% ownership coming into a $6,700 Peyton Pritchard. 50% ownership coming into a $7,700 Derek White. We'll talk about Schroeder in a bit. Simons is 15. Falls off a cliff after that, I think there are some talkable points for Boston, but how do you want to manage Peyton Pritchard and Derek White here?
Yeah, obviously two of the best plays on the slate. You got a good spot against Sacramento. You take out your highest usage player in Jaylen Brown. So these guys are not priced for this right now. With Jaylen Brown off the court, Derek White has a 30% usage rate. Peyton Pritchard, 28% usage rate. Their assist numbers take a big jump up as well. Pritchard specifically goes from like 21% to 32% assist percentage. Derek White goes up to 26% assist percentage with Jaylen Brown off the court. So yeah, these two look amazing. Totally get why they're projected for 63% for Pritchard and about 50% for Derek White. So absolutely no issue with the ownership in those two. And then Anthony Simons at 4,700, projecting for about 15% ownership. He is going to be next in line for usage as well. With Jaylen Brown off the court, he's sitting at about a 28% usage rate. The issue, I think, is how many minutes can Simons play? I think ceiling, you could probably see Simons push for 30. I think, this projection of 25 minutes makes sense for Anthony Simons. But if he's playing well and gets to the higher end of the minutes upside for Simons, I think he could have a really big game. So, yeah, Simons is a pretty similar play, in my opinion, to Cam Thomas, which we'll talk about in the later game. Similar minutes projection as well. So, I think he's a pretty solid value here. Kata 5,700, projecting about 5% ownership. It's a fine last guy in. I think you're probably expecting mid-20s minutes from him in a competitive game. But there have been games where Kata has played 30+. So I don't completely rule him out in this spot. And then you have Sam Hauser, also similar ownership, 5,200. Another fine last guy in. You're probably expecting about 30 minutes from Sam Hauser. Small forward, as it usually is pretty disgusting on the slate. And Hauser does have small forward eligibility, so that is a benefit there. But I don't think I would get to anyone else. Garza projected about 2% ownership. He was someone I was pretty high on last slate, but I don't think it's necessary to go there. And then expecting Bailey Shireman to get the start. Baylor Shireman to get the start here. But I'll pass on him. Just such a bad point per minute player. And so no thanks there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Shooting guard, small forward, 3,300, marked as a starter, and getting 2.5% ownership should tell you guys everything you need to know. There will be plenty of versions of him if you want to get to something like that a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, you said it right up from the jump. Pritchard and Derek White are just way too good at point per dollar values here in a great matchup against the Kings with no Jaylen Brown around, with the Kings missing, realistically 3 starters essentially in Westbrook and Sabonis and Keegan Murray. Like, this is just a fantastic opportunity to get to the Boston side. I kind of expected to see a bit more ownership here for the Sacramento side. Are they just so awful that they can't even be good when they should be good? Dennis Schroeder, 5,100, 25% owned. We have positive leverage here in a big way. Point guard, shooting guard eligibility. We've got him in for 30 minutes, expected to start in this spot. Then it falls off. 5% Dylan Cardwell, 5% Malik Monk, 5% Ray Now back in the starting lineup with no Sabonis here. And then it's just gone. Nothing's here. What do we do outside of Schroeder? And if you have Schroeder takes, go for it.
Yeah, so I'll start with Schroeder. I think he's the easy one to talk about. I think a really good option here at this price point. Only 5,100. We saw him in the most recent game play 31 minutes. He had a 31% usage rate. Also, you saw him make 58 passes, 8 potential assists. So really nice role here for Dennis Schroeder. And I think he's underpriced again. So yeah, he stands out as your best play, in my opinion, on Sacramento. But I kind of agree. I feel like some of these value pieces are going a little bit overlooked. So I'll start with Malik Monk, 4,900. I think he's an interesting pivot off of Dennis Schroeder. And we have seen the minutes I don't think are as secure on Monk, but there have been games where Monk has played really well and is closed like over Dennis Schroeder. And so, yeah, I definitely have interest in Malik Monk as a contrarian play. I like the upside in him a good amount. But even the front court, too. Reno, 4,600, only projecting about 4% ownership. I think he's interesting. I think Cardwell's interesting. I think you could even make the argument for Achua. So any of those front court guys, I think, are viable here to mix in for large field tournaments. Would I play them in like a single entry? Probably not. But I do think they're going a bit overlooked here. Probably not going to get to Clifford at that price point. We saw Levine come off the bench last game. Keep an eye on that. He played similar minutes, though. He played 29 minutes off the bench. So, but yeah, that's it for Sacramento. But I think, outside of Schroeder, I think there's some interesting options to take some shots on for tournaments.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Zach LaVine played 34 minutes today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that gets me anywhere, but just it was funny. I looked that up. When was that? So that was yesterday. And it was like, immediately when I saw it, I was like, oh, Zach LaVine's not playing. Like, that's not going to happen. And then pulled up the reference sheet, and it's like, no, he didn't start once and played 35 minutes. Never mind. Yeah, this just feels like somehow underrepresented for Sacramento. They shouldn't have those guys out and have only Schroeder be interesting. I don't know what it is, whether it's Cardwell, whether it's Monk, whether you want to roll the dice on a $4,600 center option, which I think is kind of viable. There's something more here. It's I expected more.
Yeah, agree. Like Sabonis, Westbrook, Keegan Murray, like 3 pretty high usage players off the court. So this game stays competitive. Yeah, I think you could see definitely one of these Kings value pieces make the winning lineup.
No Sabonis, no Westbrook, no Keegan Murray. Zach LaVine isn't starting, and they still don't play Keon Ellis anything functional. Man, they must. I don't know what that dude does on a day-to-day basis, but they must really hate him.
Yeah, I'm excited for him to get off the Kings for sure.
You and me both. So the FanDuel side for this game is pretty much the same at the top. Peyton Pritchard, 50% owned. Derek White, 50% owned. Dennis Schroeder, 30% owned. And then it falls off. 10 for Simons, 10 for DeRozan. A little bit of positive leverage on Neemias Queta at center, but you know what you're getting out of that on the FanDuel. And ultimately, we're just kind of looking at the same stuff. If you're prioritizing Pritchard and White and Schroeder on DraftKings, you would be doing the same thing on FanDuel. We shall keep it moving. So many games to get to yet. Another one that's getting kind of dicey. Portland Trailblazers, New York Knicks. Are they going to get all of their brain trust in a room here to figure out what this crazy trade's going to be, where Portland gives Milwaukee their picks back and they end up with OG Anunoby instead of Jeremy Grant, and all these guys move around? Who the hell knows? But for now, Portland 7.5-point dogs in New York. And this one's got a couple question marks that we're waiting on. Denny Avdia, questionable. Robert Williams, questionable. Scoot Henderson, by the way, apparently slowly but surely getting his way back. He has been cleared for contact and things like that. Miles McBride, doubtful for this one on the Knicks side. Josh Hart is available. 20% ownership, Josh Hart. 20% ownership, $4,300 Mitchell Robinson. We can have a conversation about that in a sec. No ownership coming in to Jalen Brunson or Towns in any sort of real way. 9 and 5. There are some things I like here quite a bit, but I'm curious where you're going first.
Yeah, well, first I'll quickly touch on Portland. So we have Q tags on Denny and Robert Williams. No one is projecting for over 1% ownership right now, assuming everyone is in. I kind of lean in on both those guys. Denny been dealing with the back injury. He played through and made it through the entire game last game. If Denny plays, though, I expect him to be limited, probably low 30s. That's what we saw last game. So assuming everyone's in, there's not much here. Even if like Denny gets ruled out, I still think it would be kind of tough to get to Portland because you have Drew and Grant still on a minutes limit. Sharp's price is 7,900. Like Klingon's up to 74. So like even if you do get Denny out, I still don't think there's much here from Portland. Now on the Knicks side, so a little bit more interest here. As you mentioned, Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson projecting about 20% ownership. Like both, Hart does have guard forward eligibility, which is good to see. And in a competitive game, you're probably expecting low to mid 30s minutes from him. He played 35 minutes last game in a blowout against Toronto. So he stands out as a good point per dollar play in the mid range. And Mitchell Robinson, I think, stands out as a pretty good value option. 27 minutes now in back-to-back games for Mitchell Robinson. I don't think you expect that, but at least it is in the range of outcomes. He's a pretty good point per minute player, about a fancy point per minute player. And right now projected for 24 minutes. So I like Mitchell Robinson for value. You mentioned ownership, not crazy on Brunson or Towns, about 5% Towns, about 10% Brunson. I think I'm a bit higher on Brunson than the field. 8,300 just feels a bit underpriced for him. So I do like Brunson for tournaments. Cat with Mitchell Robinson in, it just worries me a bit because the minutes have ticked way down on him when Mitchell Robinson is there and this team was close to fully healthy. I was way more confident in his minutes last game without Mitchell Robinson, but won't completely rule him out. And he's a frustrating roster, but still has a very high ceiling. Mikal Bridges is getting a little bit of ownership. I think I'll pass there. 6,500, that feels priced right. I don't think I need to get to OG either. But yeah, so Hart, Robinson, I think look like good point per hour plays. And then I have a bit more interest in Brunson in the field.
I am right there with you on Jalen Brunson. 32% boom rate right now, 9% ownership. It's not like the best spot in the world against Portland. They've got some, you've got Drew, you've got Tumani Kamara out there to play some solid D, but I think he's wildly underowned. This is the same thing I kind of felt about Tyrese Maxey yesterday. Like, that is not enough ownership at that price, given that boom rate. There's a lot of success here. And I kind of feel the same way about Towns. Like, Mitchell Robinson certainly complicates that a bit. I would argue I like this matchup a lot more for Towns than Robinson, just given Klingon on the opposite side. If Klingon's going to be in more of a drop, I think that fits better for Towns offensively than I think it fits for Mitchell Robinson offensively. I don't know if they're going to really care about that as much in a regular season game as you might in like a playoff game. But yeah, I find Brunson and Towns to be like really interesting contrarian pay-up options. They look underrepresented for what this is.
Yep, we're in agreement there.
I'm glad you shouted out Brunson. I was hoping you were going that direction. Mm-hmm. Just as simply as, sorting this thing by salary and like looking at what's around him. 15% ownership right now coming into Keontae George at $100 cheaper. Like, yeah, I think Keontae George is a slightly better play here, but not necessarily at double the ownership. And we don't really have any real ownership going to any pay-ups. Luka gets to 20. Everybody else above Jalen Brunson is 10%-ish or lower than that number. I'm happy to be in that area and spend my salary on Brunson. Anything else you wanted to touch on for the Knicks?
No.
All right, let's take a peek at what these guys look like on the FanDuel side. And if you're here, don't forget, hit the like button. It helps us out a ton. Let's run that like number up as far as we can for Greg and Spags, because they are coming up on Live Before Lock at 6 p.m. On the FanDuel side for Knicks in Portland, 15% ownership to a $4,500 Mitchell Robinson. He is center only. About 15% ownership coming into Josh Hart, $6,900 small forward, power forward eligible. And that's the same story. There's just no ownership here. There's especially no ownership on anybody from Portland. I still think Jalen Brunson looks a little interesting here, but not nearly as interesting to me as he does on DraftKings. Kind of the same story for Towns, but at least Towns has the power forward eligibility on FanDuel. So I like that flexibility a little bit more. What is that? 4 games so far? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 4 down, 5 to go at the bottom half of the hour. We're moving pretty well. Let's hit this final 7:30 game. Before then, we have an hour and a half gap before we get to the second half of the slate. Memphis Grizzlies, New Orleans Pelicans. Grizzlies may be getting Ty Jerome back soon. He started the day with some murmurs of potentially being here. Ended up being out. Still no Ja Morant. Still no Santi Aldama. On the Pelican side, they have everybody they typically have. We've got 30% ownership coming into a $7,800 Zion, and then a giant pack of dudes between 10 and 15. Let's go with KCP, Cam Spencer, Triple J, Herb Jones, Cedric Howard, Trey Murphy, Jock Landale, Sadiq Bey. Let's get Zion out of the way first since he's pulling away. How you feeling?
Yeah, so Zion, we have seen the minutes tick up on him. You mentioned about 30% ownership, 7,800. He just feels a bit underpriced. So we have seen in competitive games, he's pretty consistently playing low to mid 30s minutes. It's been 33, 33, and 34 minutes over the last 3 games. You've been getting more point Zion, which has been good to see. And yeah, he's been very involved in the offense, and it's a good matchup here against Memphis. So I have no issue with the ownership. I think he's underpriced and definitely one of the better plays in the upper mid-range.
What do you think are the better plays in the rest of this game in a situation where pretty much everybody looks identical?
Yeah, so I'll start on Memphis. So ownership, pretty similar in a lot of these guys. A lot of them hovering in the 5 to 10% ownership range. This team is just, they're very frustrating for DFS. They continue to run a 10-man rotation every single night and really just spread out the minutes. So last game, we saw the only guy that played over 30 minutes was Jaren Jackson, and he played 33 minutes. Looking at ownership for Jaren Jackson, he's projecting for about 10% ownership. I mean, it's a good spot. I love targeting bigs against this Pelicans front court, but Jaren's just one of those guys, a very frustrating DFS roster as well. There's games where you can take over, and there's games where you can look lost out there, even with a lot of guys out. So obviously like the ceiling on him. I think the ownership makes sense. Landell is 6K. He's projecting for about 10% ownership. Should play close to 30 minutes. I think he looks like one of the better point per dollar centers on this slate. He kind of underperformed last game, but he looks like a good play here for Memphis. And then you have Coward, Spencer, KCP, Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams, all look pretty similar to me. I think my favorite of that group probably would be Cam Spencer. He has been underperforming, but the assist rate has been great for him with John Morant out. If he can make some shots, I think he can still have a ceiling there at 6,100. But yeah, the other value just look pretty similar to me. They're fine last guys in. Vince Williams will play the backup point, but minutes probably around 20. We really haven't seen minute ceiling from him in a while. On the Pelican side, outside of Zion, you got about 15% ownership or so to the wings. That's going to be Sadiq Bey. That's going to be Trey Murphy. That's going to be Herb Jones. I think that all makes sense. 6K for Bey, 8,100 for Murphy, 4,400 for Herb Jones. Again, those guys are fine filler plays to me. I'm not going to really prioritize any of these guys, but don't mind landing on them in a lineup. Outside of that, I don't think there's much here. The minutes are a bit up and down on Derek Queen. Not getting much ownership, but the emergence of Messi is worrisome, and there's been games where Messi has started the second half over Derek Queen. So I just don't know if that's the shot that I want to take in tournaments tonight. So I'll probably pass there. And then I don't think there's anything else I would get to for New Orleans. You do have Alvarado back, but I think there's other value plays I would rather get to on the slate.
Yeah, I see this team as basically, or this game basically as Zion is a dude that I'm clearly going to be a bit heavier on. And I'm just expecting every lineup to have like one of these random guys. One's going to have Bey, one's going to have Landale, one's going to have Murphy, one's going to have Coward, one's going to have Herb Jones, one's going to have Triple J. Mm-hmm. I like Cam Spencer probably the most of anybody in this group. Really solid boom score, just shy of 30%, only 9 and change owned, 6,100, very manageable price tag on a slate where, as I mentioned before, kind of like yesterday, we're not really showing all that much ownership to the pay up options, which means this is building out as a relatively balanced lineup. I think Cam Spencer could easily slot into this balanced lineup that everybody else is putting in if you just leave somebody else out of it. I tend to continue to look at this as a situation where I want to turn it into stars and scrubs, but we don't have the same overwhelming value that we had like more yesterday, even though like all of the Atlanta guys sucked and it didn't exactly break well to begin with. This is a tough game because these guys are just so similar. You see, I mean, outside of Herb Jones here, it's like, fantasy point per minute, a fantasy point per minute, a fantasy point per minute, a fantasy point per minute. All these guys are just the same. That's tricky. I'm curious. I have no idea what this is going to look like on FanDuel, but this could be very different because of pricing. And it certainly is. 30% ownership to Zion, 30% ownership to Trey Murphy, 20 for Triple J, 20 for Coward, 15 for Cam Spencer. Then you get Derek Queen at 10. So it's a little bit more concentrated at the top. It's probably like the same aggregate ownership, but not as many individuals grabbing as much love. Like Sadiq Bey, basically unowned on FanDuel, a bit more owned on the DraftKings side. Just a tricky game all around. I don't think anybody's going to be really happy with what they get here outside of Zion.
Yeah, you're probably not going to feel comfortable about a ton. I do like the shot, though, on Cam Spencer. And we saw him 3 games ago in this exact spot. He put up 48 fantasy points. So the ceiling's there. He's just not shot well recently. 1 of 5 and 1 of 8. So if he can actually make some shots, he does have a ceiling. So like of those like secondary guys, I kind of agree. I think he's probably my favorite of that group.
So that concludes the first half of today's slate. A 7 o'clock game and 4 7:30 games. They take an hour and a half off. We get 2 more at 9, a 9:30, and a 10. What this is telling me is that you got to be very ready to late swap and optimize your lineups just before that 9 o'clock window. And there is absolutely no better way to do that than by signing up at Stokastic using the promo code PRO. The link is in the description. Get yourself 30% off Any Stokastic package you're looking for, weekly, monthly. You want NBA? You're watching this? I assume you do. Grab that NBA package. Get the projections. Get the single lineup sim. Get the contest generator. Get the late swap tool. Maybe you want it for MMA. Got another, I'd say, pay-per-view this week, but there are no more pay-per-views. A numbered event for the UFC. We've got golf going on right now. Baseball will be here soon enough. And if you're getting in right now, it's in beta. We're sharing it with everybody that has a Stokastic account. If you have it right now, we've got the props tool in beta. It's using our sharp line that we built out on OddsShopper.com. You can weight that with the Stokastic projections however you see fit, and you will immediately get updated odds, EV, win percentage, and all of the potential bets that you could lay down given this information. So with this setting right now, you want to go grab over 19.5 points for Zion Williamson on pick 6. That is the best thing you could find. Add it to your bet slip. Add a couple things to your bet slip. And immediately, you've got a card built out, and you can take that straight over to pick 6. We're going to build this tool out even more, and at some point in time in the near future, it will come out of beta. If this is something you guys were looking for, I promise you, it's going to become better and better and better as we get more people using it and as we get more features built into it. Right now, use that promo code PRO. You'll be using it all weekend. We move to the second half of it all. I'm excited for this one. This game sucks from a DFS perspective, but I'm excited that it's happening. LA Clippers, Denver Nuggets. Some injury news in this one. This is a 219 total. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this total went up 10 points today. Am I seeing that correctly?
Let me say.
I'm almost positive it was 209 when I woke up and did my show.
Let me see. I can see what it opened at. Actually, no. Yeah, I can't see what it opened at. So it might have. But it makes sense, obviously, the total going up with Jokic in. But 10 points would feel like a lot.
I'm almost positive it was 209 and a half when I did the show earlier. Luka in, Reeves out.
Okay.
Per chat.
Yeah, that doesn't change a ton. I think Luka's a solid option, but yeah, Reeves being out, it's like whatever.
Okay. So this Clippers Nugs game, Kawhi Leonard is available. He was up in the air earlier today. Everything else going on for the Clippers is typical. For the Nuggets, still no Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, Christian Brown, Jamal Murray in, Joe Val in, Nikola Jokic questionable. There is less than zero ownership coming into this game, even less than that Orlando-Toronto game. James Harden at 2, Ivica Zubac at 1, and then that is it. Jokic is 12-5. You got to have some stones on you to want to take him here. I can't see any scenario where he's playing real minutes in this game. Real enough to pay off a $12,500 salary at the very least. He completely negates Joe Val. He completely negates Jamal Murray. This game's a cross-off. This might as well be an 8-game slate.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement here. This is going to be a good game to watch, but I don't think so much for DFS. On the Clippers side, there's nothing. Harden, highest projected on guy at 2%. Feels overpriced with Kawhi back. Kawhi himself, they've been easing him back in, projecting for a little less than 30 minutes. I think it's tough to pay that salary on him. I think if I had to play someone on the Clippers, it would be $7,300 Ivica Zubac. I could see him getting like ceiling minutes and play like 35. So I think that's viable if I had to click someone. On the Denver side, yeah, I mean, these guys are priced up from Jokic out, and now we are expecting Jokic back. So there's absolutely nothing here. I got Denver plus 6.5 and some unders on JV before they got pulled. So can't wait for this to go horribly wrong. But yeah, there's nothing here on the Denver side. Jokic, I think you're probably expecting like mid-20s minutes from him. So 12.5, you just can't do it.
And just in case anybody asks, I think you and I will be on the same page here. If we get news that Jokic actually isn't going to play today, none of these guys for Denver are going to look any good still. The total is going to come back down. These guys are all still super expensive. It's an awful game environment. There won't really be any ownership here at all. You know, realistically, they probably end up under-owned because of late swapping. Like, they will look better if that happens in like the 7:30 to 9 window, but they're still going to be like guys that are 1% owned that should be 4. It's not going to be the kind of leverage you're really looking for. This game is just awful. This is so live to be a double OT game tonight. It's insane.
Yeah, I will say if Jokic surprisingly gets rolled out, I think I'd have a little bit more interest in JV. The minutes weren't great for him last night. Only played 24, but the previous game he did play, I think it was 32 minutes. So we know JV is a good point per minute player. It was 31 minutes 2 games ago. And if there's no Jokic, I think you can make the argument for him at that price point. But and then Murray,
I misspoke there.
Playable too, but that would be it.
Yeah, when I ran it this morning, Joval was pulling a bit of love at 6,500 when I had Jokic out. He's not going to look like exceptional just because of what this matchup is, but he is absolutely 100% very in play now that he's able to play 30 minutes if this happens to go a different way. But just be aware, this game stinks for DFS purposes. Let's see if it looks any better on the FanDuel side. I can't imagine that it does. 7% ownership, James Harden. 4 Ivica Zubac. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, Jokic, 11K, 16.5% boom rate if you really just want to be a psychopath and hope he plays a shit ton of minutes. But the only thing that matters for the Denver Nuggets is that Nikola Jokic can play in April and May. So just baby this dude. He's been out for a couple weeks. I can't believe he's back this quick. I figured they were going to be like extra special cautious, and it was probably going to be like I wouldn't have been surprised if they waited this out till like the deadline, but I'm glad he's back. NBA is better when he's around.
Totally agree. Yeah, because there were some rumors about him possibly returning a couple games ago, and then no. But and chat also confirmed, by the way, it was 209 last night, so it did jump up 10 points.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's how good he is. Yeah. It's insane. All right, everybody, take a sip of water, get a drink, buckle up. We got a giant steaming pile of trash to talk about. The Brooklyn Nets are 3.5 point underdogs in Utah, 226 total. This is a 9:30 start. This is a half hour after the Denver game. Oh, actually, we're going to go back. Put a pin in that one. Skip Brooklyn and Utah for right now. Let's get Cleveland and Phoenix out of the way first. I skipped it, and I didn't notice that I skipped it, but this one won't be as crazy to talk about. Shout out Dylan Brooks for last night. 10% ownership for Donovan Mitchell. Everybody else in this game is sub 10%. No Garland, no Mobley for the Cavs. Craig Porter Jr. questionable. Devin Booker still out for the Suns. So that is it. I don't mind having Donovan Mitchell. I think Jared Allen's probably like fine. There's not much here for me. I don't have a lot. I wasn't thinking much about this game because it stinks.
Yeah, so I think I'm a bit higher on Cleveland right now than you are. Mitchell and Allen both around 10%. I know it's not really the best spot against Phoenix, but anytime I can get a guy like Donovan Mitchell at relatively low ownership, that's appealing to me. Like the rates are insane for him right now with Mobley and with Darius Garland off the court. Mitchell 2 games ago against Orlando had a 45% usage rate. Last game in a blowout, he had a 34% usage rate. He's been the primary ball handler as well. So I like Mitchell a good amount as a contrarian spend up. And then I'm higher on Jared Allen in the field as well, only projecting for 8% ownership right now. We have just seen the minutes tick way up for Jared Allen. He's also a different player with Evan Mobley off the court. They run more offense through him. He's more aggressive on the offensive end. So in the first half last game, we saw Jared Allen play 7 minutes in the first quarter, and then another 9.5 in the second quarter. So he's probably pacing for like 33, 34 minutes if the game would have stayed competitive. And so I like Jared Allen as well. Jalen Tyson also playing big minutes right now. He's only projecting for about 5% ownership. But if that game would have stayed competitive, I think you could have saw like high 30s minutes from Tyson. He played the whole third quarter. Second quarter, he played 9.5 minutes. First quarter, he played 8 minutes. So he was pacing for big minutes if the game would have stayed competitive. I think he's viable as well. But yeah, not much else here for me on Cleveland. Sam Merrill, 5K, feels priced right. Probably expecting mid-20s minutes from him. You mentioned Craig Porter Jr. questionable. It's not super important. You would just get like more minutes for Proctor, or maybe you would see Lonzo Ball play some rotation minutes. But I kind of like this Cleveland team for tournaments, specifically Mitchell and Allen.
Yeah, that would be the spot that I want to go as well. Do you want to dip your toe in the Phoenix water at all? I certainly wouldn't have an issue having Dylan Brooks in any lineups. Grayson Allen seems like that would be fine as well. But I don't think any of these Phoenix guys are priority options today.
Yeah, they're all like last guys in for me. I'm pretty tilted about this too. Yeah, the Suns just smash yesterday. I couldn't have happened a couple games ago when we got Gillespie out late. So I like loaded up on the Suns and they were just like subpar. So that was a little bit tilting. But yeah, looking at the ownership for Phoenix, everyone's like, okay, so you got Grayson Allen and Brooks around 5%, and that's it. Mark Williams, I'm worried about the minutes on the second night of the back-to-back. We have seen Phoenix be pretty cautious with his minutes. So even though like the upside is there for Mark Williams, I just don't think I'm willing to take that shot on this slate. So I'll pass there. Also, I think if there weren't that many great value plays, I would be a little bit more interested in him because I could see him not only playing more, but also closing this game. But I think there's just other value plays I would rather get to on this slate. The minutes were not great for Colin Gillespie last game. He was only pacing for like 27 minutes and the game would stay competitive. So not ideal there. And so that just kind of just leaves Allen and Brooks, who I think are both viable. We saw both those guys have big games last game, but they don't really stand out at their price points.
Dude, sports are so stupid.
What's going
Nothing
on?
makes sense to me anymore. Truly. Like, Joe Flacco's in the Pro Bowl?
Isn't Shedeur Sanders in the Pro Bowl too?
I maybe?
I thought I saw that.
So Joe Flacco makes the Pro Bowl. Bill Belichick is not a Hall of Famer. What are we doing here? This can't be real. God, life is so weird.
Doesn't like everyone just turn down the Pro Bowl though? So you just get like a lot of like weird players in it.
How many people have to turn down the Pro Bowl before you get to Joe Flacco? Damn.
Well, you have Flacco and Shedeur Sanders. I assume it's like almost everyone.
Yo, his record was 2-8 this year. I mean, what are we doing? 15 touchdowns, 10 picks. Sure. Do whatever you need to do. Let's look at this FanDuel version of Cleveland and Phoenix. I was not ready for that when it popped up on my screen. We got a bit more ownership coming into this one on the FanDuel side. Jared Allen, 25% owned and with some positive leverage, has the power forward eligibility on FanDuel, makes him a lot easier to get to. Donovan Mitchell also 25% owned on the FanDuel side. Dylan Brooks, Jalen Tyson both get just north of 10. All right, here we go. Tried to do this before. Let's get back to this Brooklyn Nets, Utah Jazz malarkey that we have in front of us for today. For Brooklyn, no Michael Porter Jr. in this one. Still no Noah Clowney. Zaire Williams is out. For Utah, no Nurkic, no Love, no Markkanen. Cody Williams, questionable. As always, be ready for this game and make sure that you're paying attention to who the actual Utah Jazz starters are. That is incredibly important most days. But we've got some ownership coming in here. Start on the Brooklyn side. 50% of it is coming into a $4,500 power forward center eligible Danny Wolf. We've got another 20 to 25 on Terrence Mann and Day'Ron Sharpe. We've got 15 for Cam Thomas. We've got about 10 for Nick Claxton, the Igor Demon, just 7 in this instance. How are you handling the aggressive chalk on Danny Wolf? Is this just one of those, you got to stick with him name-wise?
Yeah, I think so. So there's unfortunately a decent amount to like here for Brooklyn. Danny Wolf, the guy getting the most ownership, around 50%. And I think you're just expecting a minutes increase from him. He started last game. The minutes, what did he end up playing last night? So he ended up playing, it was 27 and a half. It was actually a little bit more than I thought. But he's going to have a bigger role here without Michael Porter Jr. And I think he's going to take on a bit more of a playmaking role as well. So like Danny Wolf, a good amount for value. I think you can maybe argue he's going a bit overowned, but definitely stands out as one of the better values on this slate. With MPJ off the court, you got Cam Thomas sitting at about a 32% usage rate. I think that makes sense. Right now, you are probably, so he's projecting for, 21 minutes right now. I think you could definitely see a little bit more in a competitive game. I think you could get Cam Thomas playing 25 minutes here. So again, I think a pretty similar play to Anthony Simons. Maybe you could argue as a bit of a higher ceiling just because the other guys on the court with him. Terrence Mann is projecting for about 20% ownership. That's like, whatever. He does have guard forward eligibility. Not super excited about it, but he's certainly in play. Day'Ron Sharpe will play the non-Claxton minutes. He's 4,600. Claxton is 6,600. Love targeting bigs against the Jazz when Kyle Filipowski's out there. One of the worst defenders in the NBA. So I think you could certainly make the argument for either Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe on this slate. And then, you mentioned your boy Igor Demon projecting for about 5% ownership. I think he's viable. I don't know if I'm going to get to guys like Drake Powell or any of those like gross value plays, but it's a really good matchup against Utah. And unfortunately, you have to have interest in this team.
Yep, you do. I think the Wolf one's pretty easy. Terrence Mann will scare the hell out of me, but the guard forward eligibility just helps. Flipping the coin between Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe is obviously always terrifying, but in a matchup against Utah, I'm completely interested. Cam Thomas could score 30 real points today in this matchup in 20 minutes against the Jazz, and I don't think that would be all that difficult as the type of game that you could see him going crazy, or at least, attempting to go crazy. The shots will go up. Whether they go in or not is a different story. And then it's another day, another Utah Jazz day. They're obviously missing a bunch of bodies. We never really know who the hell is going to be out there on a day-to-day basis. What are you confident in for the Jazz today?
So confident in Filipowski. I know he's right now projecting for a ton of ownership, but he should start the 5. And in a competitive game, you're probably looking at about 30 minutes for Kyle Filipowski. So, he's a much different player when he plays the center position. And they don't really there's not a ton of competition for minutes behind him. I mean, you're probably going to get some slow-mo / Taylor Hendricks. But, Filipowski looks like one of the better point per hour plays here in the mid-range. Totally agree with that ownership. $8,200 Keontae George, only projecting for about 15% ownership. I think he's going a bit overlooked. I like the upside in him quite a bit without Laurie and without Yusuf Nurkic. So I would say one of my favorite GP plays there for sure in Keontae. And the rest of the team, I think Ace Bailey's a fine last guy in 5,900. Bryce Sensabaugh, we've seen some ceiling games for him. I think he's viable in large field tournaments. Slow-mo, good point per minute. I think we'll play backup 5 right now, projecting about 20%, 20 minutes. So I think he's in play for value. But and then also we're still waiting on Cody Williams status as well. Not super important, but you would feel a little bit better about the minutes for some of these secondary guys if he doesn't play. Guys like Slow-mo, Svi Mikhailuk, Walter Clayton, guys like that. This is like a really, really ugly game, but unfortunately, we're going to have to get some exposure for DFS.
Would you rather have Keontae George or Jalen Brunson?
Oof. It's close. I think I would lean Keontae, but Keontae is also getting more ownership right now than Brunson.
Okay. Yeah, those two guys are kind of like on each other's corner. So, and we talked about both of them because I'm with you. I think, Keontae George on a day like today, having full reign of the Jazz is pretty interesting. He's going to let it go. And it's not like Brooklyn's going to be bringing great defense to the table in this one. So it's a decent enough spot. Let's flip to the FanDuel side for it. Highlight Brooklyn and Utah before we close it out with the final game of the night. 35% ownership to Kyle Filipowski, power forward center eligible. He's the most owned guy on the FanDuel side for this game. Danny Wolf, still 30% owned, 4,800. He is small forward, power forward eligible on FanDuel. Nick Claxton actually is your third most owned guy here. 6,100, center only, gets to 25% ownership. That's a lot of ownership to Nick Claxton on FanDuel for not having power forward eligibility. Like, he's a quarter of the centers? Really? I'm not like, I like it and I like the matchup and all, but that seems oddly specific for just like a classic mid-range guy that could play 26 minutes. That's scary.
It does feel a tad high. I agree.
Yeah. Like if he had power forward because FanDuel just hands that out, like everybody gets it, then it's sure, whatever. Then it's so much easier for him to just be the choice center for 20 to 25 people, 20 to 25% of the people. Feels a little high to me. Final game. Pistons coming in probably not so happy after their most recent game. Karis LeVert is doubtful. Cade Cunningham is probable. This is a 10 o'clock start, by the way, for the Warriors. Clearly, no Jimmy Butler, no Jonathan Kuminga. Guy Santos probable. Otherwise, everybody's around. 10% ownership to Steph. No ownership to anybody else for the rest of this. How do you want to handle this as a late night hammer, or is it not a late night hammer?
Yeah, not really a late night hammer here. I'll start on the Detroit side. Not much ownership at all. Highest projected owned guy is, you have like three guys about 3%, Cade, Asar, and Jalen Duren. I think Cade's probably my favorite play on Detroit. Matchups fine in a competitive game. You should see 35 plus minutes from Cade. Obviously lead the team in usage. So I think he's a fine contrarian spend up. I think for me, I would give the edge to Donovan Mitchell as a contrarian spend up at a similar price point, but I think Cade's a pretty similar play there. So he's still interesting to me. I don't love the spot here for Jalen Duren. I also don't love the price point there at 7,800. And then, the Pistons, they continue to play a 10-man rotation. So not much here for the value. I think I'll pass there. On the Golden State side, so looking at ownership right now, you got Steph at about 10% ownership. Obviously, a guy with a pretty high ceiling. Minutes in competitive games are down a bit, though. That is the one concern. But you could see 33, 34 minutes from him. So another totally reasonable spend up. The rest of the team, I think we're expecting Draymond, Horford, Podziemski, and Moody to start again. That's been the starting lineup for them last couple of games when they've been fully healthy. So Horford, 4,800, probably getting low to mid-20s minutes. But the price point has come up. I think I would rather get to other values in the slate. Draymond's been really disappointing. Also, minutes have been down on him as well, but the price has come down to 5,500, where I think he's at least playable. I think minute ceiling for Draymond is probably around 30. But guys like Podziemski, Moody, I think they're a bit tougher to get to. I know the role's been solid for Podziemski. The potential assists are up, but Melton's price point is up too. So, and you're still going to get a pretty deep rotation for Golden State. So not much else here for the secondary plays.
Yeah, for me, I like Steph. He's right in that same bucket as Brunson and Keontae George for me. Obviously, Steph's a little bit more expensive, but I wouldn't mind having more of Steph, and then it slowly just becomes other guys as the late swap stuff happens. I am a little bit higher on Duren here than you, and I agree, 7,800 I don't love. I do like that this is a 10 o'clock start. It's an old man, Al Horford. It's they don't really have any other centers behind him that I give a shit about. I think this could be an interesting spot for Duren. 26% boom rate, no ownership. I think there's a bit more ceiling there that could be interesting. We saw him get 30 minutes 2 games ago against Denver. So that's still in the cards, I guess, getting to a legit 30 minutes. Not that you should have a ton of him, because there's a reason he's a 3% optimal guy, but I wouldn't mind being over the field on Duren as we go into lock and seeing where that takes me.
Yeah, totally fine with that take.
Otherwise, we're on the same page for everything else here. I don't have anything else really to add. We will hit the FanDuel side. I won't leave you guys go without seeing the FanDuel game to close this out. It is Detroit. It is Golden State. And it is equally as unappealing. Steph Curry, 9.4% owned, is the high mark here. 8% to Cade, 7.5% for Jalen Duren. And that will end it all right here. We have taken that lap through the slate. It's a hell of a slate. We have 4 guys on DraftKings that are 40% owned or more. There's a gap of basically 20% ownership. Derek White and Luke. Top 4 guys are breaking away. Peyton Pritchard, Danny Wolf, Kyle Filipowski, Derek White. Which of those 4 guys kills you tonight?
I would say of that group, probably Danny Wolf, just because the Nets are still going to play 10 guys. And I could see the minutes going a different direction, but I think it's tougher to get away from the Boston guys. And then obviously Filipowski, I think is hard to get away from as well.
I hate saying it, but I think it's Derek White for me. And I still love him, and I would still have a bunch of him. But with the $7,700 price tag, with him getting the actual attention, whatever that ends up looking at, if he's just going to continue to be as inefficient as he's been so far this season, I could see 77 being a little bit harder to hit. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's $600 cheaper than Jalen Brunson. I could very easily turn a Derek White into a Jalen Brunson in a lineup and feel pretty good about it.
Right. And there is some blowout risk in this game too. It's 11.5 point spread. So there's definitely a chance that you don't see the full fourth quarter for guys like White and Pritchard.
DK, tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, you can find me over on Tails. I have content for daily fantasy sports and player pops. That's prize picks, underdog, sportsbook stuff. So a few different packages, tracking my plays over on Pickett. And yeah, that's all I got.
There we go, everybody. Top of the hour, which means it is live before lock time. Greg Ehrenberg, Chris Spags, noted Ryan Rollins lover, Chris Spags. What's going on, boys?
I like Josh's running list of all of the players who are like the Spags all-stars, the guys who Spags is always all over in DFS, which to be fair, Ryan Rollins has been a pretty good one for a lot of this year. Who is before you guys sign off for the night? I'm curious, Josh, who are like your starting 5 Spags all-stars?
Tim Quarterman, Ryan Rollins now, Davion Mitchell. They were awfully small backcourt. Did you have any big men that you were like disproportionate?
Quentin Grimes has to be a wing.
Quentin Grimes. You might have to play the 4 here. One of these guys. I guess Tim Quarterman's going to have to come off the bench.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of centers that I have crushes on generally. I feel like to me, like Tolu Smith, I like as a per minute guy, but he's not anybody that's really been super meaningful on a slate. You'd have to go.
The Tolu Smith like 97 fantasy points in 40 minutes, and that's what's causing that.
Yeah, usually that's what makes a guy pop up. Yeah.
Okay, I figured as much.
Well, Josh, DK, have a great weekend, guys. It is time now for NBA Live Before Lock. So do Spags and I a favor here. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also want to remind you guys before we head into the weekend that it is Pro Bowl week. You can sign up for any of the packages here for 30% off with the promo code PRO. It is the last chance for you to take advantage of this promo code. So go ahead and do that before it is too late. Spags, how are you doing here, and how are you feeling about this slate?
Feeling good. And for what it's worth, just to close the loop on Ryan Rollins, 1.5 fantasy points a minute yesterday, despite the crazy foul trouble he had. It was one of those things where he got pulled with 9 minutes left in the second quarter with 3 fouls because Doc Rivers, and we're always afraid, God forbid, a guy gets the 4th foul. But anyway, for this slate today, really concentrated player pool. I feel like if you're running a Stokastic sim, if you're running my data as well, same thing here. Luka Doncic feels like a player that's worth getting that exposure to. Again, if Ryan Rollins could put up 1.5 fantasy points a minute yesterday versus the Wizards, why can't Luka put up 2 flat in whatever amount of minutes he's going to play? So I think getting to him, you lose that flexibility for the late swap options as the slate goes on. But I feel like Luka plus some of the value and some of the mid-tier, not really value, but guys like Peyton Pritchard, I just feel like that's easy to build lineups like that today.
It is an interesting slate from a standpoint of it's 9 games. Even though it's one of the bigger slates that we've had over the last few weeks, just because typically DraftKings will lop off and FanDuel will lop off end of the slate games. We have all of them on the slate. Somehow we have the least amount of questionable players that we've had in a meaningful amount of time. Like obviously Denny Avdia, that's a big one. He's questionable, but unless there's somebody else who I am like Cody Williams is questionable, Craig Porter Jr. But in terms of meaningful guys, Avdia is the only one unless somebody else gets downgraded. Is there anything that I'm missing there?
No, I agree. And I presume Avdia goes. I mean, I think that, he's been playing through this back issue lately. Obviously, backs can seize up kind of randomly, and there could just be a day where it's not good as opposed to days where it is. But yeah, I think he goes. So there's nothing I'm, super worried about. But there's always the general things you might want to swap for, just like having the flexibility for a guy who's starting and we didn't expect it. Or I guess if Jokic were to not play, obviously based on the national media reporting it, but he is still technically a Q tag, like he could not play, and that might open up Joe Val a little bit again, maybe not so much Jamal Murray. But yeah, I'm with you. I think for the most part, I think we know what we need to know, barring, the unforeseen that can always occur.
And if you guys have any questions for us over the course of the show, either drop us a super chat or you could tag me in the Stokastic Discord channel. Is one of the perks of having a Stokastic sub is you get access to that Discord channel. So I'll be on the lookout for any messages that come in the NBA DFS channel and tag me in. Here's what we got for the ownership as of right now, Spags. And you mentioned it's kind of a condensed pool. Even though we've got 9 games, we got a few guys pulling a bunch of ownership. Peyton Pritchard, nearly 60% projected ownership. Then you got Danny Wolf, 51% projected ownership. Filipowski is 46% owned. Derek White, 45% owned. So some backstory into why some of these guys are as popular as they are, if you didn't catch all of the deep dives. So you've got, for the Boston Celtics, no Jaylen Brown today. That's what's leading to all the ownership on Peyton Pritchard and Derek White. Do you have any issue with the ownership going to those 2 guys, Spags?
No, I mean, they both are producing about, 1.2 rounding up fantasy points per minute with Jaylen Brown off the court. I mean, the big thing to me is that, earlier today, it looked like there might be a bigger ownership lean towards Derek White, or at least, they'd be closer. I think with the salary difference there, I expect these two guys to produce, pretty similarly. And, projection wise, I have Derek White by about 0.5. Stokastic, it's a little bit more of a gap with Derek White favored, by 3 fantasy points. But just based on the data with how it's been with Jaylen Brown out, and they've had not about 1,000 possessions, but about as close as you can get for a stable sample size. They're both producing around the same rates, like a little more assists for Peyton Pritchard, a little more usage for Derek White, which Derek White's played this year. Maybe that's not a good thing for him to get more shots up. But I think they're basically the same players. So I'd rather take the cheaper guy. But they should both be in about, half your lineups. And I think for Peyton Pritchard, probably more like 60, 75%.
Yeah, they both look like they're appropriately owned to me. I do favor Peyton Pritchard over Derek White. That's kind of what the field is doing as well. But if I have to just roster one of them, I'm going to take Peyton Pritchard at $6,700 as opposed to Derek White at $7,700. And also, like you said, Spags, we got Pritchard in here for 1.16 fantasy points per minute, Derek White in for 1.23 fantasy points per minute. Here's what I think is an interesting talking point about Boston. Obviously, the absence of Jaylen Brown opens up a ton. That's why I got all this ownership going to Pritchard and White, but nobody else is really all that popular from Boston. Is there somebody you like outside of the really chalky guards that you think is a good option that maybe the field is missing out on from the Celtics?
I mean, I don't mind Anthony Simons. I'm not the biggest fan of his overall, but he is a guy that puts up about 1 fantasy point per minute with Jaylen Brown off the court. And you should see a usage uptick today. He's putting up normally without Jaylen Brown 28.7% usage as opposed to his usual 23. So that's a pretty big rate uptick. Not quite as much as a guy like Schroeder gets with Westbrook off the court, but it's a massive leap for a guy that does sort of, I feel like the fourth man out a lot on that Boston rotation. But I think in general, like, these Celtics generally don't do a whole lot. In terms of like their outlier days, it also seems like it kind of comes out of the blue for the random, Jordan Walsh days, your random Josh Minot kind of days. And then those guys get shunted down the rotation. So hard for me to like any of them. I think if you're going to go to any Celtic that's not, White and Pritchard or Simons, I think Cada makes the most sense, just given the fact you're facing a Sacramento team that's pretty bad, has a low total, should face, a good defense today in Boston. And also they just brick shots in any situation. But really, I think it comes down to Pritchard and White, and like anything else, just sort of you're talking yourself off the good chalk to try to get a little bit cute for game theory's sake.
Yeah, I think Simons makes sense in a lineup that does not have Pritchard or White, just in terms of, one of these guys gets into foul trouble or Simons just gets hot off the bench. It's a pretty good matchup against the Kings. And then all of a sudden he's playing some extended minutes. He's only $4,700. He's been, a little bit underwhelming so far, I'd say, in his first Boston Celtics season. But he's still somebody who is very willing to take a lot of shots. He's just gone from a guy who was the number 1 option in Portland to being like, usually the 4th option on the Celtics team. Now no Jaylen Brown. Perhaps if one of these guys struggles in Pritchard or White, they could need Simons to step up a little bit. So if you want a cheaper and more ownership-friendly alternative, I think Simons is a way to go as a possible leverage option from the Celtics. All right, going back to the ownership, we also have a lot of ownership going to Danny Wolf from the Brooklyn Nets. So if you look at the Nets injury report for today, it's a lengthy one. You've got no Zaire Williams, Michael Porter Jr. He is out due to a personal reason. You've also got Noah Clowney out because I think it's a back injury or something on him. So you're missing 3 pretty key players to the Nets rotation. But of course, Michael Porter Jr., who's had an all-star caliber season. He's been terrific this year. His absence is going to open up all kinds of usage for the Nets. But the only one who's really pulling a ton of ownership is the aforementioned Danny Wolf, who is going to be one of your 4 most popular players on the slate. You've got some other ownership too going to Terrence Mann and Shaedon Sharpe right around 20%, 15% ownership to Cam Thomas, 10% ownership to Nick Claxton. Let's just presume, unless you really push back, Danny Wolf, 4,500, one of the better value plays on the slate. Is there anybody on the Nets, kind of the same way I asked you the question about the Celtics, outside of Wolf on the Nets? Is there anybody that you were looking to get to? Because I have one interesting angle here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear your angle. I think for Wolf, I just feel the most confident about him for all the reasons you mentioned, the ownership being there, obviously, but also weirdly for him, you take MPJ off the court, you take whatever other Nets run available besides Zaire Williams off the court. You're looking at a guy that's producing about 0.92 fantasy points a minute. Then you take Zaire off, and he's been at 1.12 while not having a crazy amount of true shooting either, at 54% true shooting. So not like he's been hot with Zaire off, and like cold with him on. It's just that he gains more opportunity from having one more guy not in the mix alongside Clowney, alongside MPJ. So Wolf, I think, is the obvious one. Day'Ron Sharp, I like. But I want to hear your unique take now that I've given the thumbs up on Danny Wolf on my side.
All right, so I'm going to tip my hand a little bit, but what do you think is the most possible minutes Cam Thomas could play? Because we know this guy likes to chuck when the ball is in his hands. He's very cheap. We're not getting a full allotment of minutes out of him, but he's $4,600. There's no Michael Porter Jr. What if we get 25 or 26 minutes out of Cam Thomas? Like, I think it's on the table. I don't think it's totally impossible with Porter Jr. out of the mix. So, by the way, also Cam Thomas, who was looking for a long-term contract extension in the offseason, his value is plummeted over the course of the season so far. But his ability to actually, he's only got one real NBA skill. He can score. Everything else is subpar. I think this is a real opportunity for him to take on a massive amount of usage. The question just becomes, how many minutes does he play? Because if you remember just last year, it was very seldom we would see just a $4,600 Cam Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is that he does seem to have fallen out of some amount of favor, with the coaching staff there. Like the other day, I'm sure everybody saw on social media the clip of Cam Thomas passing up a little bit in front of the logo 3 because he just swung to another guy, so he didn't have to take the grenade shot at the end of the shot clock kind of thing. He got benched immediately after that. Earlier in the day in Stokastic data, you did have Cam Thomas getting projected for 25 minutes. He was coming up a lot for me then. Now he's projected for 21. So I'm with you that if he were to get 25 minutes, I think he'd be a lot better play. And it does stand out. We can make all the Cam Thomas jokes we want. I think it's very easy to mock the fact that he really is a relentless gunner. And he's not fantastic at it either in terms of he's not really hitting a lot of the shots, but he does get 8 assists per 100 possessions when you have all these guys missing today for the Nets. And that's something where you're talking about, a 30% plus assist rate for him, which is not necessarily, normally in his bag. So I think you can see potentially the best Cam Thomas soft matchup, going against Utah as well. The hard part is for this spot, and I think this is something we don't normally have to consider in DFS games, especially this time of year. This is pretty clearly like a double tanking spot where they don't want to lose any sort of leeway to the other side with the Jazz, the Nets, and competition for one of those top picks. And I think if you get Cam Thomas playing too well, it's weird. He'll get benched for playing too crappily, not being motivated like he was in that clip we talked about. I think he can also get benched for playing too well here, which would be sort of a tough thing to deal with. But yeah, I think he's worth getting some exposure on. I don't trust the minutes, and I don't trust anything in a spot where it does seem like they absolutely want to lose.
Was it Jamal Shed? Was he the Raptors player? Do you remember the tail end of last year where there was a Raptors player who it was a game where the Raptors were trying to absolutely tank. Somebody had a really good first quarter, did not step on the court for the rest of the game. One of the beat reporters was he was playing too well, and they just had to take him off the court. And it was somebody who was really chalky too. It was extremely frustrating. Somebody in chat remembers. Was it Jamal Shed? I think that's who it was, but I don't totally recall. Also, one of the most ridiculous players ever to be hey, we have to bench you for tanking purposes, Jamal Shed.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a part of the strategy. I know Josh had mentioned it with Nurkic, pointing out that some of the Nurkic missed days seem to coincide more with games where they actually have a chance of winning. So it's odd, but definitely one of those things where I don't want to, overcompensate for it. But I think Stokastic giving you a minutes projection where you're only getting him, 15% ownership for the field. If you get there, great. I don't want to be out on him, Cam Thomas for the reasons you mentioned, but it could get extra messy today in a way that it doesn't always get.
This is correct. A couple people brought up in chat. It's actually more ridiculous than Jamal Shed. It was AJ Lawson who got benched for tanking purposes at one point last year. Yeah, AJ Lawson. All right, yeah. So as far as Cam Thomas goes, though, $4,600, only 15% owned. I don't want to go crazy with him in lineups, but I'm going to be overweight to the field on Cam Thomas. I'm boosting his minutes projection a little bit. For what it's worth, he played 25 minutes in the last game. Well, not in their last game, in the last game he played.
Yeah, I mean, I think he gets 25. I don't think that was when I saw that projection minutes-wise from Stokastic earlier. I was it seems about right for a spot where the team is not, is not fully stocked for sure. Yeah, I think he's honestly just a wildly different player at 21 minutes compared to 25. So if that's reason enough to just jam him in a little bit more, or at least keep the flexibility. What if he picks up a surprise start or something? I don't think that's likely to happen. It might not be a bad idea just to get more than the field, just so you have that flexibility.
Yeah, the net situation is annoying from a standpoint of with the guys that they have out and the matchup against the Jazz. it's almost inevitable that a couple of guys are going to have good games relative. Oh, by the way, now other people in chat are saying that that it actually was Jamal Shed, and I was right initially. All right, so whether it was Jamal Shed or AJ Lawson, the story remains the same overall. But if you look at the price points on the Nets and the guys who are out for them today, I think it's almost inevitable that one or two Nets players ends up in the winning lineup for today. So I understand people in chat being like, "Boy, I don't want to play the Brooklyn Nets today." Maybe you don't have to go crazy with any of these guys, but I think it's a mistake to just fade this team entirely because you don't want to deal with the Nets rotation nonsense. It's too much opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. Like, I think sometimes the thing that people miss in DFS is that, like, you take players off, the team still has a Vegas total that, expects them to produce a certain amount of stats that go with it. Like, they have to go somewhere. Just because the team is bad or you don't like the players or you don't know them doesn't mean the stats won't go somewhere. And the fact they're facing Utah in a game where, like, the 225.5 combined points is actually one of the better totals on the slate. I mean, tied for number 3 as of, all the Vegas totals I pulled in before the show. So, like, it is a high total. It's a bad Utah team as well. But these Nets guys, and you got to keep in mind too, like, the Nets players are not playing to lose. Like, they're playing to get better rotation spots, playing to secure their next contract, to get on the radar of better teams that might want to trade for them. Maybe the Nets themselves might include these guys in a trade to go somewhere else. They're playing for something real. So, like, I think to omit the Nets, especially as one of your last teams on the slate and not have that flexibility, I just think that'd be a bit of a foolish thing to do personally.
I pulled up the prop stool here also, just kind of out of curiosity to see where the players projecting relative to what some of their props are. Terrence Mann under 1.5 threes. So that's not really like a widely available line or anything like that. As far as the other lines here, we've got Danny Wolf under 13.5 points, but over 6.5 rebounds. This actually looks fairly favorable. Over 6.5 rebounds for Danny Wolf at plus money. Let's see if anything else. Terrence Mann over 2.5 assists. That's also a fairly low line on Terrence Mann, considering the amount of guys who are out. So, yeah, there's some interesting props that stand out here. And the props tool, by the way, if you guys have not caught any of our shows recently, it is live over on the Stokastic site now, and it comes with access to any Stokastic sub as of right now. So if you're an NBA sub or even if you're an NHL sub, you do get access to the Stokastic props tool. You can find it by just pressing the props right here on our suite of tools on the top left portion of the screen. Anything else you want to mention as far as the Nets go?
No, I mean, Terrence Mann, Day'Ron Sharpe, I think also noteworthy values right now. Mann, one of the guys that will be a gainer minutes-wise. What he does usage-wise, hard to say. I just feel like he hasn't been the same player since his early days for the Clippers. He's involved more into like a pure defensive guy, an occasional rim runner guy, but should have more usage in the spot. So projection at 22 fantasy points or so is not anything fantastic, but as a value play, I think he should be in about a third of the lineups. And Day'Ron Sharpe, I mean, just stands out rate-wise as well for the Nets not being the Nets who are not going to be available for them for today's game. Like, you have Day'Ron Sharpe producing about 1.3 fantasy points a minute with those guys off. He won't play a ton of minutes because he is still going to be mostly your backup center playing minutes where Claxton isn't out there. But could he put up, 27, 30 even in 20 minutes? I think he can. It's just like, again, there's a lot of opportunity for the Nets here. So I think really keeping an open mind to whatever Nets come into a lineup, probably a better idea than not, because they're a short rotation against the Utah team that is actively a bad defense as it is. And clearly they don't want to be good today, even more so.
So a lot of people in chat, well, I don't know about a lot of people, but I've seen like 3 or 4 people bring up Jokic's name. And I do think it's kind of an interesting talking point. So Nikola Jokic expected to make his return from a knee injury. He's been out for a meaningful amount of time. By the way, his return today, this was kind of unexpected. If he is actually to stay healthy for the rest of the year, he is actually back in the mix for end of season awards now. So that's something that's pretty notable about Jokic making his return for tonight. For DFS, I'll also get obviously your take on this, Spags, but he's $12,500 on DraftKings. And then over on FanDuel, we've got the price tag on Luka at $11,000, or sorry, on a Jokic at $11,000. $11,000 on FanDuel, that's a little bit more palatable than the $12,500 on DraftKings. But then you also run into the issue you can only play one center over on FanDuel. Spags, I'm not getting to Jokic today. Maybe I end up regretting that at the end of the day. That's always something that's possible to happen, but he had such a long time off. I just expect him to play somewhat limited minutes today, and that's going to be really hard for him to have a ceiling game at his price tag.
Yeah, I mean, him getting about 28 minutes in Stokastic data gives him about, 47, 48 and change projection. I think it's hard to get there. If it were a spot, you get a team that's not super low pace like the Clippers with, the total not being there in a great way either. I think you maybe make the case to get there a little bit more. But I'm with you. I think FanDuel 11K when you have the center only position, and frankly, I think center on FanDuel, not, there's not really any big runaway winners there. I think from the guys who are going to be popping up as the highest owned and the highest optimal there. Like Filipowski, you could still play a power forward. Jared Allen, you could still play a power forward on FanDuel. Jaren Jackson, you could still play a power forward. Sarr, same thing. I just think maybe there's more opportunity to get there with Jokic if he does play a little bit more, or if he's just crazy efficient and puts up the 2 fantasy points a minute that he can. You're talking about him then getting maybe 55 to 60, and that might be enough at his price tag on FanDuel. But DK, I just don't see myself making that leap today, especially given how good Luka looks. But one thing I'll say is the field certainly is going to be so heavy on Luka that maybe paying up for the other guy that you can get on the slate, might be a way to get unique from the field. But you're talking about Luka versus Washington, most ideal conditions possible. Jokic off of an injury in a game with a low total versus a low pace team. A little bit hard to make the case for Jokic besides just the pure game theory. He's literally a 4x value right now. It's hard to make that case.
And as far as Luka goes, I think if you're paying all the way up, he's pretty clearly the guy to go to. If you guys are playing cash games today, I think you should be playing Luka in cash. Do you have a pivot that you like off of Luka, Spags? Let's say somebody's building lineup and they go, hey, I'm playing all of the popular Nets cheap players. I'm playing Filipowski, but maybe somebody doesn't want to pay up for Luka in a lineup and try to differentiate a little bit. Is there a pay up option? Obviously, it's not going to be somebody in the same price range as Luka and Jokic, but is there somebody on the slate who does have a price tag to them that you like as a pivot off of Luka?
I mean, I would say if I'm just not price tag wise, I don't think there's a pay up option that I'm jonesing for. I think that if you're getting to Donovan Mitchell, I don't mind that. Cade, not super well projected for me. Harden, same thing. There's not great values, but I guess honestly, you just make the case, play Mitchell, play Cade, played Harden. In particular, Cade and Harden, you're talking about the exact same position, and theoretically, they can hang 70 or something, and that could be the player you needed. But I think in the spot, what would appeal to me more is just playing more balanced at point guard then and trying to get in, Pritchard, Schroeder, Derek White, maybe even Simons with that group. I think I'd feel better about, max 2 out of the 3 Boston guards, but you can get all 3. Bub Carrington, I don't mind today, a little bit lower down the depth chart, but I think you just get away with playing a little more balanced at point guard, not spending all the way up. But you do have guys, that are there at similar price tags. I just think your Cade, that tier of guys, it doesn't project that well. So you kind of have to hold your nose and just hope that they somehow beat out Luka or get close enough that, they can pass him up.
So I have somebody who I like that I also think kind of serves as leverage. LeBron's $8,900 against the Wizards. Now, obviously, he's taken a pretty significant backseat to Luka this year, but it's a very good matchup against the Wizards. And in the event that you get a ceiling game out of LeBron, I mean, that just so very clearly comes away from the production of Luka. So I'm a little bit overweight to the field to LeBron now. Not where I have an insane amount of him, but I mean, if you play 15 to 20% of LeBron, I think it's a pretty interesting way to get off of Luka in some lineup, Spags. Great matchup for him still. And then you just get the leverage point as well.
I mean, we've seen that hit this year where Luka's been mega chalk and LeBron had one of his outlier days. And I do think he's a guy where the rebounding coming along a little better for him has been sort of visually obvious in his stats after he wasn't crashing the boards that hard at the beginning of the year with coming off his injury. Now it seems like he's closer to full health. I didn't get there a lot for LeBron today, but I think 11% owned, that seems like a fair number to get to. And, frankly, for Luka, I'm getting currently, 48% Luka, Fields at, 27. I think shaving a little bit off of that for Luka and going to LeBron wouldn't be a crazy thing to do. But yeah, I think projection wise, I certainly get why Luka's coming up so much more. And I do have LeBron a lot lower.
And to be clear, Luka is still my guy on the high end that I want to go towards. I'm overweight to him and to LeBron. It's more so just giving people an alternative option. So it's not only Luka in all of their lineups. We'll get to some of your guys' questions in a second here. I see some of those starting to come in. Also, just want to read you off the ownership on the FanDuel side of things, which it looks very similar to the DraftKings side. Your 4 most popular players on FanDuel, they are the same 4 most popular players that were on DraftKings. Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, Kyle Filipowski, Danny Wolf. So we're talking about the chalkiest guys on today's slate. It is very, very applicable to both sites. Let's look at some of your guys' super chats now. We've got one here from Langston Cole. He wants to know, for his last man in, should he go to Paulo Banchero, Denny Avdia, or Kawhi Leonard? He could fit any of those 3 in.
I mean, I don't really love any of them on the slate. I did get Paolo when I was simming some lineups earlier on stream today as the last guy in, and it was simming pretty well to get Paolo in. I'm not the biggest Paolo fan, but I think you're probably riding him while the tide is on the more positive side of things with his performances lately. So, yeah, I don't mind Paolo there, but all three of them, I think, not the day to play him really in terms of projections.
Yeah, I don't think I'm looking through my lineups now. I don't have exposure to any of them. So let's figure out how much salary he likely has then. So if he has the ability to play, who is it? Denny, Kawhi, or Paulo. Well, so part of this too is so Denny's $9,800, Boncaro's $9,300, and Kawhi is $9,000. Like, I'm not leaving $800 in salary on the table for an NBA DFS slate, especially not a 9-game one. To me, Denny is going to be the guy, but I mean, I don't have any of. I have 150 lineups and 0% exposure to all three of those guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. Denny's minutes just not high enough lately with him, being banged up with the back injury. It was a little bit better for him when he was playing high 30s as opposed to low to mid 30s. Yeah, I don't know. Paolo's been good lately, and I do think getting Paolo is on a hot streak is not a bad thing for a player like Paolo.
All right. We've also got a question here from, or a super chat anyway, from Legna 1878. However, there is no question attached to it. It's just a super chat. So I'm going to look through.
He put it in the actual chat. I'll pull it up for you here. That's this one.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I was looking through the YouTube chat for it. So here's what we got from Legna. And it says right in there. All right. I sent a super chat, but forgot to include my question. Running home now. Maybe try driving. Lock is coming up. Who do I need to have as far as exposure goes in the 7 p.m. games? All right. So the only 7 p.m. game that we have today, looking over the schedule, I'm fairly sure there's just the one. We have locking at 7. It is the Lakers-Wizards game. I wouldn't say anybody that you have to have, but Luka.
Yeah, I mean, I like Luka. I like Sar a little bit. I like Keyshawn George a little bit, but have to have, I think, is most likely Luka because he could put up 70 there, and then your night's just over. And you want to have some exposure there.
Yeah, if it's just one lineup that you're playing Legna, you definitely don't have to have Luka in that one, but he's the best player to be rostering from that first game, and nothing else is a super high priority. I like LeBron as a somewhat contrarian option, but it's not somebody who's in 40 or 50% of lineups for me. And also just realized Langston did have a second part of his question, which was top value plays on DraftKings. I really think that's the chalk. I think your top value plays, it's Derek White and Kyle Filipowski and Danny Wolf. From a points per dollar sense, Pritchard and White as well, though it's probably not really the nature of the question you're asking. Is there anybody that you would consider top value play on the slate who isn't one of the guys who's picking up a bunch of ownership?
I mean, Wolf, definitely that. I guess KCP projects a value of note to me, even though I don't find him to be the best player to get to at high volume, but I'm getting there 15% of my lineups. Mitchell Robinson, too, 4,300 going against Portland. I think on a slate where there isn't great, 3K guys starting kind of value, the Mitchell Robinson backup center types always appeal to me at 4,300. I think he's a good play. But really, Terrence Mann, I guess. Wolf is definitely the value that I would say I'm the most confident in, and so is the field.
And then we've got a super chat here from Vinny T. With the Wizards injured, which is true. We do have the Washington Wizards a little bit banged up today. You've got no Chris Middleton. You've got no Marvin Bagley. You've got no Trey Johnson. Obviously, no Trae Young, who it's easy to I always look at the injury report. It's so weird to me. I'm like, Trae Young. I was like, oh, yeah, right. Trae Young. He is on the Wizards now, sort of. Although, reports have been that they're just making up injuries for Trae Young. So, there were reports when they first traded for him that there was a good chance he wouldn't play this year. And based on what their injury reports have been, that kind of seems like that's going to end up being the case with Trae Young. Maybe they throw him out there a few games at the end of the year to see how he gels with the young guys. But anyway, Vinny's question is, with the Wizards banged up here, who should we, I guess just generally wanted to know why no Bub Love or potentially anybody else we could look at from Washington as well. So from your standpoint, By the way, like I think Bub Carrington is playable today. He's just been priced up for the situation at $5,600. We don't have a bad projection on Bub Carrington. At $5,600, we have him projected for 28.5 fantasy points. He's not the best fantasy producer in the world. They got him projected for 0.84 fantasy points per minute. To me, Spags is just because he's already been priced with the situation being known by the pricing algorithm.
Yeah, I mean, Bub Carrington, it does seem like rate-wise, definitely, takes a noteworthy jump off with having, no McCollum. Obviously, he's got, oh my God, the dog just crashed into the camera. Can you not? She is a nightmare to have in the studio currently, and it's driving me insane. But Carrington's only put up 0.84, or actually, no, 0.88 fantasy points a minute. The situation with no McCollum, with no Middleton, with no whatever other Wizards of note that are out today. So for Bub Carrington, I think he does take a rate uptick, but like you mentioned, the price tag is there. He's not as good of a producer as a guy like Keyshawn George or Sarr. I don't think the ceiling is as high. But I will say for Bub, he was one of my least favorite players coming into this year, like really inefficient, like bad shooter. I feel like he also had bad vibes, like constantly a surly face. This year, he is like playing better. He's getting some shots up. He's looking a lot more like a guy who's using his size in a good way. So I'm not anti-Bub. I think if you want to get there 10% owned, I get it. I think he's about a 10% play for me as well. But, like he's not a priority like some of the other guys are.
Yeah, I'm right in line with the field. I have him 10%. It's just, more or less, fairly priced considering the situation. Here's the contrarian play that I am overweight to from the Wizards. I'm about 2x the field on Alex Sarr, who we've just seen he has a gigantic ceiling. And you don't know when it's going to happen with Sarr. He's got a really wide range of outcomes. He'll shit the bed some games, and then he'll be in a tough spot you don't expect. And all of a sudden, it's like, why does Alex Sarr have 38 fantasy points at halftime or something like that? So Alex Sarr, 8% owned. The Wizards being a little bit shorthanded. He's very talented. You see these ceiling games from him from time to time. So without there being, a good amount of value on the slate, but there's not, outside of Luka's super obvious spend ups, I like a contrarian Alex Sarr.
Yeah, he's been great lately. I think, the rate's not necessarily showing a massive uptick for the Wizards that aren't available, but I do think minutes wise, that's more reliable having no Bagley, no Vukcevic in. He's again, visually, like that game versus Klingon the other day was one of the more fun games I've seen, Sarr play / just two young big men play because like they were going at each other pretty hard, going after the blocks really aggressively. Like Sarr's game is really evolving. If you watch Wizards games, I know there's not a lot of reason to do it. But like he and Keyshawn George, I think are very fun. 1-2 punch. They probably need somebody better than Trae Young in there, but I think Sarr and Keyshawn George happy to get in whatever situation.
By the way, there is a reason to watch Wizards games because I'm frequently rostering players against them in DFS. So I do end up watching Wizards games for that reason primarily. Is just like, hey, the Wizards are playing. I probably have exposure to guys who are playing against them. And Stephen Leibowitz wants to know any chance Eric's mom will call Spags during the show. So Spags, I don't presume you know about this, but we're on a stretch of something like, I don't know, 6 of the last 8 shows Eric and I have done together. His mom has called him at some point during the show. And it turns out he doesn't know how to mute his phone.
Oh, that's remarkably dumb for even by Eric's standards. But put on Do Not Disturb. I think it'd be a good way. But no, I am not. I can make all the jokes here. I am not in touch with Eric's mom. I respect the sanctity of her mom and his dad's marriage. And Puppet Lindquist may have some jokes, but I do not have jokes with Eric's mom.
Yeah, he was making some excuse. He's like, well, what if it's an emergency and my mom calls? But then he also admitted that he doesn't even know how to turn his phone on mute anyway, which the whole thing then doesn't. Because basically what happens is he's outed himself as an idiot, and then he's like backtracking his reasons for it to be justifiable when it doesn't matter if he doesn't know how to mute his technology though.
Yeah, Eric, I think sometimes more of a savant than people realize, and also larger than he looks on camera. I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind. If you're somebody that trolls Eric in the comments, he is in fact 6'2", 6'3", pretty burly. That said, I question his mental acuity if you don't know how to mute a phone in 2025 and you're not 70 years old.
All right, we're on the same page with that one. Isaac Dietz wants to know, is Bey okay today, or is that box score chasing? So Sadiq Bey, who has had how many fantasy points did he end up scoring in that game the other day? If I remember
45.
correctly, he was in the winning lineup. It was, we've seen some massive games. So Sadiq Bey's last 3 games, 46 fantasy points, 47, 52. The usage has been up. He seemingly is making every single shot that he's taking. So to an extent, it's maybe a little bit of box score chasing, but it's not like his price has gone all the way up. I have him in. What do I have? I have 14% of Sadiq Bey. He's in play for today. It would be here's where I think Isaac would be more problematic. If he had these big games and then all of a sudden Sadiq Bey was like $7,500 and you're like, I have to play Sadiq Bey. Look how good he's been lately. But it's not like he's been way priced up for these performances either. He's in play.
Yeah, I'm getting him in about 30% of my lineups right now. The other day when he went nuts against OKC, I was getting him in like 80%. I'm like, why is Bey popping up so much? I think he's really a big winner from there's not being a point guard out there now. Like Zion is the one that's bringing the ball up a little bit. Trey Murphy, as the chat pointed out, he's now listed as point guard, even though he very much is not the point guard. But Sadiq Bey just kind of facilitates more in the half court game, does occasionally bring the ball up as well, especially if he's ripping a rebound. So I like Bey. I do feel like it's a little bit crazy that he's putting up as much. Like you mentioned, those recent results seem to be too much of an outlier. But can he get you 30 today? Yeah. Can he get you 40? Lower probability, obviously, but I think he can.
I mean, the other part of this too is they like randomly just don't like Derek Queen's minutes are wild. Like he just some days he's playing. Part of it is he's a rookie who's really inconsistent, and sometimes Misi just plays better than him off the bench. But it's also a benefit to Sadiq Bey if Derek Queen isn't on the court. And some of these games, Derek Queen just kind of shit in the bed, and they're just like, cool, we're going to send you to the bench for most of the game. Misi starts the second half. So that's something else that benefits him from time to time. We got some questions in Discord as well. But before we get to them, Spags, I want to hit on the nuke of the night. So we'll do the nuke of the night, and then we're going to get to your guys' questions in Discord. Strap in. Which one? You know what? Let's play this one. We were just making fun of Eric. Let's blow his balls off. All right, Spags, it is time for the most popular segment in DFS. This is where we figure out one of our favorite GPP options on the slate to give out to people to build around. And, the last show I was on was for Wednesday. I wasn't here yesterday. And my nuke of the night was Karl Anthony Towns, in part because Mitchell Robinson was out. And what ended up happening on that game was Karl Anthony Towns put up the most Mitchell Robinson stat line imaginable with 8 points and 22 rebounds. And then I came in second in the $4.20 max contest, missing out on first place by 1 point. So if I would have just gotten 10 points out of Karl Anthony Towns in that game, I would have come in first in the $4. Happy with second, but first would have been a little bit better. But anyway, for today, I like Mitchell Robinson. He's only 17% owned going up against the Portland Trailblazers, and he's priced down to $4,300. Of all of the cheap value options that I think present the most upside on the slate, Mitchell Robinson to me is one of the more forgotten ones that we have of the entire night. Another guy who kind of like when I was talking about Derek Queen's minutes before, they could vary a little bit for Mitchell Robinson. Some of it depends on whether he ends up playing minutes with Karl Anthony Towns or not and how many of them he ends up playing. But the last couple of games that Mitchell Robinson was out there playing, he played 27 minutes in each of them. He played 27 minutes against the Kings. He played 27 minutes against the 76ers. Against the Raptors, he rested that game. So there's opportunity for, mid to upper 20s minutes for Mitchell Robinson, depending how many minutes he plays alongside Karl Anthony Towns. I like that upside for somebody who's not all that popular.
Yeah, I think he's a good value. I mean, I mentioned before, like really, I think with on a slate where we don't have value, guys like Mitchell Robinson are producing, 1.1 fan sports minute on limited action off the bench and, can earn more minutes like you just talked about. I think that makes sense. For me, I'll go to a guy that I'm surprised is not chalkier today. Dennis Schroeder. I feel like he went off in the same situation with Westbrook out. Now he gets Sabonis out too. And for Schroeder, the big thing is that his rate should take a massive uptick. His assist rate goes to just shy of 40% with having Westbrook and Sabonis off the court. Usage rate gets up closer to 27% as well, about 1.2 fantasy points a minute. And granted, the sample size might be a little bit small for that, though it's, over 500 possessions. So wouldn't be nice to see more, but I think this is a good spot for him again. And I'm going to be there in about half my lineups, maybe a little more than that.
All right. Nice. Yeah. I think that he makes a little bit of sense as well. Dennis Schroeder. And we've got from 1-2, Eric definitely has a little bit of the tism. So I don't think that is, I mean, there's something there. I don't know if that's it. It's something else though. Something else. I agree. You're on to something though. 1-2. We'll send him this clip and we'll ask for a follow-up.
I think autistic people know to mute their phone. Like, I think that's rude to autistic people to say like, oh, they don't know. Like, I think they do.
Yeah, I mean, I have this theory that his mom watches all of our shows, and I make fun of Eric a little bit, and then she has to call him to make sure he's okay during the show. And I think that's also the other thing too is now he mutes himself and just picks up the phone on the call. The whole thing, It's
quiet quitting by Eric Lindquist. It sounds like.
Well, there's the speculation from 1-2. I didn't say it, he did. I'm not disagreeing with it, but it is something he said. All right, we've got here some Discord questions. Let's get to the questions from the Discord channel. And once again, want to remind you guys that if you want to get access to Discord and any of the packages here at Stokastic, you can get 30% off with the promo code PRO. You can use it for any of the packages here. It is NFL Pro Bowl week, so want to give you guys an opportunity to sign up for any package for 30% off, or maybe just want a weekly package if you're normally an NFL DFS player and you want to check out one of the other sports. 30% off, promo code PRO. Link to sign up is down below in the YouTube description box. So, Spags, these Discord questions. Well, it's funny. The first one I see here, it's about Sadiq Bey. So we actually just answered that one. But then we've got one here. Reggie wants to know, who would you build around in high stakes single entry? All right, who are the single entry core plays that you'd say for tonight, Spags?
I think Pritchard, Wolf, Filipowski would be the first three in. After that, for me, it would get to the Schroeder, Derek White tier stuff. But I think that first three, I guess, let's see if we agree on that. Pritchard, Wolf, Filipowski.
Yes, and I would say Derek White, really good play in single entry. But of all the guys, and I mean, there's only four of them. If I'm going to take one of the 40+% owned guys out of a single entry lineup, it's going to be Derek White for me. I think he's the easiest one to get off of.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And certainly, you could also just play max one. I mean, obviously, if you're doing single entry, you might make the choice anyway. Max one of Pritchard and White, I don't think would be a bad philosophy to have in a good amount of lineups tonight.
Question. Do you have any real issue with playing lineups with Derek White and Peyton Pritchard together? One thing that I am considering doing is making a player group and just making it so any lineups with Pritchard and White together get a little bit of a negative ROI boost. And it's not to say that I want to have 0 lineups with them together, but I might want to limit it a little bit. Is that something you're considering at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think ended up with that a little bit more from some of my filtering processes, but I agree with you that like when you see the field playing 60% Pritchard and 45% White, it's sort of logical to think, okay, these guys might not correlate the best together. And obviously, it's going against Sacramento. It's not a bad total. You have no Jaylen Brown, so they both absolutely can hit. But I think being mindful of having some portion of lineups with max one of them, and ideally, if you can do that, trying to keep it balanced where it's like you have half those lineups have Pritchard, half of them have White, because I really do think they have very similar ranges of outcomes. It's just the price tag is so much more Pritchard favorable.
And don't forget, if you guys want to do that in the Sims, you will see on the pre-contest Sims page, you'll see that kind of like a bar in the middle. It says filters, columns, export players, groups. Just click where it says groups, and then you type in Pritchard, type in White. You give them like a -5 or a -10% ROI boost, and that'll just make it so that any lineups that have the two of them together will get a negative ROI boost, and that'll thin out some of your lineups that have both of them in it together. So that is one way you can go about doing it in the tools, and I think probably the best way to do it with the tools. Young Metro Boomin, our first FanDuel question of the day. We've not gotten very many FanDuel questions so far tonight, Spags. Young Metro Boomin wants to know who are our favorite players at each position for FanDuel purposes. So I've got my FanDuel lineups that I've built pulled up right here. And starting at the point guard spot, oh, you're going to like this, Spags. At point guard for me, it's your guy, Dennis Schroeder. He's showing up on FanDuel for me more than anybody else. He's only $4,700 on FanDuel, point guard and shooting guard eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think Schroeder would be one of those picks for me. I mean, frankly, if we just want to do the thing we do, we lump point guard and shooting guard together. Pritchard, White, Schroeder would be 3 of my 4 in between those positions. Yeah,
the only guy who's point guard only here at the top would be Luka. Other than that, pretty much everybody's point guard and shooting guard eligible over on FanDuel. So I'll go Dennis Schroeder and Peyton Pritchard as my guard combo guys. At the forward positions, that for me is going to be Danny Wolf at small forward, and then I'll go Filipowski at power forward.
Yeah, small forward, I agree with you on Wolf. The Jewish Joker gets to show his full Jewish Joker potential, hopefully with some playmaking. That's what I'm rooting for today. Filipowski, power forward for me as well. If not him, I don't mind Jared Allen, but I'd prefer Filipowski by a decent amount.
And then finally for me at center, that will be Jared Allen, still underpriced with Evan Mobley out.
Yeah, Jared Allen, a guy you can play at power forward too. I don't mind him. I mean, at a center only option, I think Claxton stands out on FanDuel with a 20% optimal rate, but a little bit overowned. Yeah, I go Claxton. Again, I think Jokic too, a little more in play to me on FanDuel than he would be on DraftKings.
All right. What's our next question here? JEW says DK single entry locks. And we just kind of touched on that one. But yeah, I would say Peyton Pritchard, Danny Wolf, Kyle Filipowski. And then 20 max approach in general. Do I get more overweight to certain good chalk players to have more of a stand on certain players, or let the Sims take the top 20 laps? So here's what I do. I don't know if you do anything differently, Spags, but if I'm playing 150 lineups and I'm playing 20 lineups, my 20 lineup max is just simply my top 20 sim ROI lineups out of my 150 set. I don't do like something uniquely different for my 20 max opposed to my 150 max. Just like which of those lineups have the highest ROI. I don't know if you have any more insight or something different you do.
For 150 maxes, I'll usually be a little more of a stickler on making sure I get minimum ownership for guys like that I naturally am fading in my data. But I think for a 20 max, I try to let it ride a little bit more while being mindful of like, I really don't want 90% of a lot of guys unless they're like in a smash play. But like a Danny Wolf, I think hits, based on my data, about 70% of the time he's in a winning lineup. So those are guys like, I just kind of ride with that number. And then if I get random guys popping up a little more into 20 max, I'm okay with it. For 150, I do think you want to be a little more disciplined and try to treat that like a portfolio a little bit more if you can.
And then wanted to know, go wild with unique. So I almost banked the 20. Yeah. So when the other day, same sort of same thing I just said. When I came in second on Wednesday in the $4, it was just those were my top 20 sim ROI lineups. It was the same. It was part of the same lineups I played in 150 max that day, and it just so happened to be that I got lucky that one of my lineups that had the highest sim ROI just happened to be one of my better lineups on the entire day as well there, JEW. Bronx boy Rob wants to know, what do we think? It's a 2v2 question. Okay. It's like a 2v2 question with a 1v1 mixed in also. So you need like a whole abacus to figure this one out. It's Karl Anthony Towns and Dennis Schroeder, or Jaren Jackson Jr. with either Pajemski or Bub Carrington. That's going to be Cat and Schroeder for me.
Yeah, I like Schroeder enough. I think he would carry that side, but I don't really mind either. But yeah, Cat and Schroeder for me as well.
Interesting question from the Black Mamba. I understand where he's getting at here. He wants to know thoughts on Slow-Mo or Hendricks today. So he's just looking at the Jazz are banged up, good matchup against the Nets. I'm not getting to any of those like way off the board Jazz guys like a Kyle Anderson or Hendricks though.
No, I got a lot of Sensabaugh, which I'm curious if I update things, if he's going to move at all. But, that's mostly just because of the positionality and his projection not being that bad. The Jazz guys, I think were a little bit less popular to me than the Nets guys, which I obviously get why.
And then Einsteinium wants to know, what are our thoughts on Will Riley and Malachi Branham tonight? I don't have any Branham lineups. I do have 5% of Riley, but he's just kind of like a guy who's fairly priced. Probably one of my biggest issues with Will Riley is that he's a very middling option who's also in the first game on the slate. But I wouldn't go crazy with Will Riley exposure. I get the Wizards are shorthanded though.
Yeah, Branham didn't come up for me at all, and Riley I got 2% of, so I'm not really there. He's just such a bad producer. He was coming up as a top value earlier on the day, but he's only like putting up 0.7 fantasy points per minute. So if he gets to a lineup, I'm not running away from it, I guess, but he didn't thankfully do that a lot for me today.
All right. M Grizzly wants to know anybody that we are boosting tonight. He did ask FanDuel specifically. This isn't really a boost slate for me. The only boost I have set up is just trying to trim some of my lineups that have Peyton Pritchard and Derek White together. I did make a group of them and gave it a negative 10% ROI boost, but there's nobody I'm going out of my way to try to get to more of. That for me is more of a situation where, there's a lot of injury news on a slate, which we just don't have, even though it's a big slate today. Is there anybody in particular who you think that people should be boosting to make sure they have more of?
I had to boost Derek White a little bit to get him where I wanted to exposure wise, because he was coming down for me. I ended up getting him at 40%, but he's the only guy I had to give a boost to, where like just my projection favored Pritchard, and I just wasn't naturally getting White, so I had to kind of plunk him in.
And let's see. Looks like we got some super chats here. So let's make sure to get to those. We've got, oh, look at this. Brad Kaufman. I don't know if he's trolling based on the start of the show or it's just a genuine question, or maybe it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. He wants to know, Spags, any love for Davion Mitchell? Oh, actually, I just realized he's
he's not on the slate.
Yeah, I just realized he's not on the slate. So he must be asking about Donovan Mitchell. I just said Davion Mitchell in my head because I was sitting here with you. But Donovan Mitchell, I don't really have very much of him for today.
No, he was not a priority play for me. I mean, so much of my Luka exposure is going there. I do think he's one of your best pivots to Luka on paper, but I'm not getting there today. I think it's more of a Luka slate for me.
And then we've got our next question here from Mamone Samson Calzone. Kind of a similar question what we had before. Were you guys boosting for a DraftKings GPP and then also best value? So yeah, just hit on the boost one. Nobody I'm up boosting. Spags mentioned he was trying to get to a little bit more of Derek White than he was otherwise getting. I made a group of Pritchard and White just to make sure I don't have too many of them in the same lineup together. And then best value on the slate. Yeah, best value on the slate. Nothing that's too crazy off the board. It's going to be Danny Wolf, Kyle Filipowski, Spags. Who are some of your other top value guys to add to that mix?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are definitely the key ones for me. I mentioned I was getting, Mitchell Robinson, your nuke of the night, I think is a pretty decent one to get to as a value. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I don't mind, though I really keep your exposure low, but he does pop up in my data and sometimes hits. I've met about 15%, but really Wolf, Filipowski, I think Streeter still. Those are the values I feel the best about.
See what else we have. We've got, this is a 2v2 question. This is from Mastermind Magruder. Mastermind Magruder wants to know Sharp and Pope or Mitchell and Mann. That'll be Mitchell and Mann for me.
I don't mind the Sharp and Caldwell Pope side.
So for me, here's the problem. I like Day'Ron Sharp. I do not like KCP. I've got 2 out of 150 lineups with KCP. So it's hard for me to really recommend him. I don't love Donovan Mitchell, but I have him at least in some amount of lineups. It's a little bit more than KCP. It's a very minimal amount of lineups. I don't love Mitchell today, but KCP just is not showing up for me really at all. And then to me, of all those guys you brought up there, I prefer Terrence Mann as a value play over Day'Ron Sharp.
Yeah, I'm also realizing he meant Shaedon Sharp and not Day'Ron because I actually like Day'Ron as a value. And I was like, oh, 2 value plays. But yeah, I think Mitchell, I think, is the better side of that because Shaedon Sharp is not a player on the slate unless Denny's out.
All right, we've got here for nukes. Here are Miami Mike's nuke picks for the day, and Miami Mike's had some good ones. Although he's got 3 in here. Boy, you're really spraying and praying here, though, Mike. If we get to a point where, because at first he was leaving 1 nuke, now it's 2, now it's 3. You're really upping your odds. You're giving yourself. Although I saw you said that you had a flag yesterday, so that was obviously a really good one, setting a teenage record with was it 49 points yesterday. But anyway, he's going with Zion, George, and Mitchell as his nuke of the nights. All right, good luck. Good luck to you tonight, Miami Mike, one of our trusty regulars around here. Thank you very much for the support, as always, Mike. We've got Ace of Spade wants to know the best options for DK tiers. So yes, I'll pull up tiers right now, and let's see what we've got. Tier 1, Luka's in tier 1, so easy. We don't have to have a conversation about it. It's going to be Luka. Tier 2, we've got Jaylen Brown, who's out, Denny Avdia, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Paolo Banchero. I'll go with Denny amongst those guys. Tier 3, boy, so many of these players who are out for today. Tier 3, that'll be LeBron for me. There's only 3 active players in that tier because Spags got in tier 3. Lauri Markkanen, Michael Porter Jr., and Domantas Sabonis all in tier 3. So you're kind of got a limited options there. Tier 4, that is going to be Cat for me. Tier 5, I will go with, this is interesting. I'll ask you this. Zion or Derek White, if you just pick one and there's no salary considerations. Is any available to play, by the way?
Yeah, I'm real low on Zion today, so that'd be Derek White for me easily.
All right. I'm also going to go with Derek White in the absence of Jaylen Brown, but kind of an interesting one there. And then finally, tier 6, we've got Quickly, Bane, Anunoby, Black, Grayson Allen, Jared Allen, Peyton Watson, Tyson. I'm going to go with Jared Allen there with Evan Mobley still out for the
Yeah, I think that's
Cavs.
Allen. That's not a great group, but I think Allen stands above a lot of those guys.
Yobi Trice wants to know, do I prefer Sharp or Cam Thomas? And then any Baylor. Boy, lots of Sadiq Bey questions. Yeah, I think Bey is, I certainly wouldn't say I love him today, but I've got 15% of him. He's a guy to roster, no doubt about it. Do I prefer Sharp or Cam Thomas? I think Cam Thomas is a really interesting lower owned option for the Nets. I'm going to go, I like both. I'm overweight to both of them for what it's worth. I like both, but I'm going to lean towards Cam Thomas.
Yeah, I've got more Sharp and I've got 30% Bay, so I'm okay with all those takes. And I think your point about Cam Thomas still a solid one. If he gets 25 minutes, he looks like a different player.
Which is exactly what he played last game. So that's what I've got. I've got 25% of Cam Thomas. Just checked what my exposure is heading into lock. We're at 14 money line play of the day. Oh, interesting. I don't want to mislead you anywhere, but I don't have one. I don't just want to make one up to give you a bet. But I don't have any money line bets for today, Allrat. I don't know if Spags did one off top of head. I'm going to assume the answer is no, but do you by chance have one?
I'm looking at the totals now to see if there's one that I feel is particularly intriguing. I do like, again, I said this on my show this morning. I like Denny Avdia and like the American capital of Jewish people. I feel like that's like not a bad narrative thing. I feel like he might show out a little bit more. But yeah, I feel like moneyline bet, I would want to take one of the plus money teams. I don't know, Washington, because given how the Lakers let themselves down in so many spots like this, Washington would be a massive plus 300.
Let's see if I had to pick a spot. I guess so. Denver's the line is very close in the Denver Clippers game, and they've got Jokic coming back today. Obviously, how many minutes Jokic plays is a little bit up in the air, but Denver at home against the Clippers, they're currently plus 116. If I like absolutely have to pick one going through everything, Clippers obviously playing a lot better as of late, but yeah, I'll take if I have to pick one over at. And once again, I don't recommend you put money on this because this is a spur of the moment, didn't put a lot of thought into it, but I'll go with the Denver money line as a plus money underdog at home. And then he asked us Laravia or Herb Jones. Let's see. Laravia or Herb Jones.
I have them both at 21.3, so I am this exact same guy to me. I have no preference towards either.
I'll go Herb Jones. I do agree they're very, very similar though. Balmer 24 wants to know Luka and Bub Carrington or Keontae George and Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to go Luka and Bub Carrington.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends a little bit to me on how the rest of the lineup looks, but I think Luka and Bub might be chalky. But if it's all super chalk, I'd probably go the George and Mitchell way. I don't mind that grouping, but I personally prefer Luka and Bub, but I think the field will as well.
And then Miami Mike also throwing in his favorite value, or at least a value option that he likes, or just a fourth nuke for him to throw on the board here. He's going with Igor Gioman for a cheap option. I've got some of Gioman just under 10%. Good matchup against the Jazz. You know, like who knows what the Nets rotations are going to be today, but I don't hate that. Do you have any Gioman exposure?
I got like 7%. I do think he's got triple-double upside at some point in his career. Like, I think he should be the kind of guy that's capable of putting up like 25 and 5 when the Nets are like fully depleted later on this year. Right now, though, I feel like he's still a little bit more buried in the rotation than I would like. But I think he's worth getting some exposure to because, you know, really all the Nets you can take a look at today because it's so soft versus Utah.
All right. And now let's see if there's any final questions for us to answer in Discord before the end of the show. And we've got Comment God says he's got 6K left at utility. He's already got Filipowski and Sensabaugh in the lineup. Who should he play for 6K or under? Cedric Coward? Sadiq Bey? Yeah, I'll go Sadiq Bey, actually. Sadiq Bey. Sadiq Bey, if you already have Sadiq Bey in the lineup, then Cedric Coward.
Yeah, I'd be Team Bey.
And then finally, Einsteinium. This will be the last question. Then we're going to be hitting lock. Thoughts on Harden as a spend up, and then also is Pajemski a reasonable pivot off of Bey? I don't think you have to pivot off of Bey. It's not like he's crazy popular or anything like that. As far as Harden as a spend up, I have zero James Harden lineup. So I hope that's not the answer.
Yeah, I got Harden in like 3% of my lineups. I think he's a guy that you get to if you're not getting a Luka, which, sort of the goal is to get guys like we talked about that could spike, a little bit more or comparably to him. But yeah, and actually, based on all the chats, Greg, I'm wondering if Bay is going to be pretty chalky today because it seems like there's been a lot more Sadiq Bay questions, and I thought he was my little secret weapon, and it might not be the case.
Yeah, I think it's not unjustifiable to play him. But people are like, hey, I kind of like Sadiq Bey. Am I box score chasing? We saw that comment come up before. And I am also starting to think, like, is he going to be maybe closer to 25% owned instead of the 15%? Because Sadiq Bey is an odd player to be getting this many questions about. So we'll see. We'll see when the game actually starts. But I am also starting to suspect that he could be a little bit more popular than he's projected to be. Well, anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching the show. If you have not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're looking for bets and your Stokastic sub, we've got our props tool that comes with your subscription. You could also get free bets over on Tails. You can follow myself over there. You can follow Eric and everybody else. So, guys, thank you all very much for watching the show. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Later, guys.